All right, just gone 7:45 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along on OTB AM. It's Adrian with you this morning alongside Owen Shane as always. And as always, it's turning out Kenny Cunningham. Good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
How are you?
You are a nailed-on part of the Friday, lads. It turns out now, Kenny. You're, you're here with
not
us.
Quite.
Pretty much most Fridays.
Oh, occasionally.
You've kind of elbowed
occasionally, I'll give you.
Kevin Cavanagh out the road. I won't lie to you. He was a regular until you started turning up, and then we were like, listen, let's.
We've got Kevin this morning. Is his World Cup memorabilia from 2000.
The first thing that you said when you walked in.
Okay, don't drop it. Don't drop it.
What the hell is this doing here? What's the comment?
It's borderline lack of respect, really. Kevin Sean bringing that in and just chucking it on the sideboard there. Korea
and Japan 2002, as you can see here, possibly. And this is signed by the entire 2002 squad. Yeah,
well, most of us have got these. We were in the hotel and somebody came back with one of these footballs. A couple of the lads. Yeah, they got them around the corner and they were quite striking. Stands out a little bit, generally just an old football, you get it signed. Yeah, it's kind of wooden or whatever, just the look of it. So most of us went out, grabbed one and just kind of got them signed up, just a bit of a keepsake, bit spontaneous.
But you?
Yeah, that's the little squiggle, that's it. Yeah, but I haven't got a huge amount of memorabilia at home, but I've kept that ball, it's around the place somewhere. But yeah, I was a little bit...
You're not happy? You're not
I was
happy
a bit distressed. Well, it's a bit of a token gesture what you have here anyway. It's almost just thrown together. Well, look, it's not a lot of talk. Look, you got Keith Andrews' caricature here.
Well, he brought that in.
A bit of a laugh in his jaw. Yeah, but then you've got
what you're finding, Kenny, here is so Kevin Cavanagh brought us in this one of his most treasured pieces of memorabilia.
Well, clearly not, or he wouldn't have brought it in the first place.
Well, that's how much he values his...
Oh, you with me on that?
I'm not sure about that, Kenny.
That's how much he values his colleagues. Keith Andrews was not afraid to sort of have us take the piss out of him for looking like Sonia O'Sullivan with the with his caricature here. He was fine with that. And Lee, another valued colleague, Kenny, you see a theme coming here, brought us in one of his world title belts.
No, fair play, but it's I don't think you've shown enough respect. Maybe I should rephrase it. I don't think you've shown enough respect.
I think you haven't shown enough respect. What memorabilia have you brought in?
He brought in tea cakes last week, and that is far better.
I haven't given any much memorabilia back in the house, to be honest.
What are you going to bring us in? Bring us in something. You must have something you can bring in.
Laundry. All my stuff's in a laundry bag somewhere in the attic. I will have to.
We'll happily accept some Kenny Cunningham memorabilia for the studio.
It's a lot of bad memories there mixed in with the good.
Really?
I'd rather not go there.
I can't quite decipher whether you're overly sentimental or under sentimental, and that's why we don't have anything from you.
Yeah, fair point. Maybe a conversation for another day.
What do you mean there's a lot of bad memories?
Oh, it's bittersweet, Adrian.
What do you mean?
Seems like you're hiding.
I don't want to go into the laundry bag. Let's just leave it at that.
Really?
I don't want to delve in there.
Is it not all good? All good?
No, it's definitely not all good. No.
What's the worst thing in there?
What are you talking about?
Well, no. Well, like most professional players, I think. Well, most players think their careers are littered with more disappointment than success.
Regret or disappointment?
Oh yeah, big regret, and disappointment kind of coexist. I think hand in hand. So yeah, not conversations I generally like to have. Gets me in.
I'm surprised. I have to say, I thought that at a remove from your career, because there's obviously at some point after that, regardless of what's happened in your career, you can rationalise what went on, and the level of success you've had, Kenny, is the level of success.
You're doing exactly what I asked you not to do, aren't you?
That very few people get. You know what I mean? Like, you're the guy that...
It depends how you qualify success, really, Adrian. So, no. I suppose the answer to that is no. You box it off as best you can. You move on. That's it. Career's over. But no, I must admit, it's difficult. The early experience as well, in particular, was wonderful. Its biggest career highlights, of course, it was. Some magical memories, but bittersweet as well. Some of the biggest disappointments.
In terms of big dollars of regret. Personal or team?
Both. Personal first and foremost. You look to yourself, undoubtedly. And although my memory's not great, some of the most vivid memories of times in an Ireland jersey when, just not up to scratch really. Just moments you could have relived, situations, decision making, mistakes you've made, cost the team, things you could have done better. Yeah, so. That's it. That's life.
There are specific things that stand out for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I'll never forget them.
Yeah, it seems like the quotes on the back pages this morning from Seamie Coleman would almost resonated with you? Because I was actually going to ask that later on about the idea that he was saying that it's going to be a lot more painful watching Denmark play in the World Cup now. It's going to bring all those memories flooding back a little bit. Like, did you experience that sort of like almost borderline flashback element when, I don't know, in the lead up to big tournaments? I'm not sure what memories you're referring to here, but presumably a lot of them would have the unintended consequence of, I guess, not appearing in a major tournament like after in certain times.
Yeah, you're right, in Ireland jersey, yeah, because we came perilously close. Now the lads fell at the final hurdle against Denmark, but we were well beaten over the two legs. And when we went perilously close to qualification a number of times before we qualified for Japan, and people talk about fine margins. I know it's a cliche, but they really were fine margins. Now over the course of the qualifying campaign, you look back and you look at maybe, you know, games we lost, we drew, key moments in the game, and you look to yourself, you know, me, from a personal point of view, I always looked at situations, could I have defended better, you know, could I have made more of an impact? And the answer is clearly yes, I could have done better on various occasions. There was huge impacts to those decisions, those small mistakes. So
it seems strange then that you'd actually keep these items, even if it's in a laundry bag in the corner of the room that you would even...
No, we're talking items. I'm not talking about a few jerseys. I was never one for lads that asked for a jersey. I'd always swap a jersey, and so I'd come home and I'd wash the jersey, I'd put it to the side. So they're stacked in the laundry bag somewhere in the attic, and there's a few bits. I have that ball there. I mean, with the World Cup 2002 was fantastic. That was more relief, more so than anything else. And the lads had a good World Cup. I didn't play a lot. I only played a couple of minutes in the World Cup of 2002. It was great to be a part of it, and it was reasonably successful. The lads done great. So there is good memories there.
Is that one of your regrets that
No, the regret is we didn't qualify for any more. Yeah, 2098. Yeah, like I said.
And are you holding it sounds like you're holding yourself almost personally responsible for the...
Oh, not well. Yeah, you look to yourself. Yeah, you look to yourself first. Yeah, could I have done anything better? And you do. Key moments. I was reasonably experienced around that time. And you look at key moments, and yeah, without a doubt, I'm not going to go into the individual games and the individual moments within games, but some of the most desperate moments on a football pitch have been in an Ireland jersey. Right. Almost inconsolable. I remember in the end it didn't prove to be too close. I remember a game, I'll just say, 1-0 in Croatia. We played a game away to Croatia. I can't remember when it was, but we lost the game 1-0 in the last couple of minutes. David Suker scored, and it was my fault. It was a big kick up the pitch. I got too close to him. He rolled me and put it in the back of the net, and they won 1-0. We played okay, good defensive display, probably earned the draw, but ultimately my mistake cost us the game. I remember being in the dressing room after the game. I was literally just livid with myself. I just couldn't engage with people, couldn't communicate. We were flying to Malta the following day. I just literally couldn't make eye contact with people. I'll tell you how bad it was. I actually got out. I had Ulysses with me from James Joyce, wow. which I'd bought sometime before and I hadn't started. And I was literally heading that book for about 2 or 3 days. And I found it very difficult to snap out, even before the Malta game. I actually took it in. Those bad feelings and that kind of negativity, and kind of so angry with myself. I actually couldn't shake it before the Malta game, which we won 3-2. Stan got a brilliant free kick, and I didn't play particularly well in that game either. I remember after the game thinking I was angry with myself, the fact that I couldn't box it off and kind of move on in such a quick space of time. But I was fuming with myself. Just couldn't get out of my system.
Was that a feature of your career, or was that because of the magnitude of the game and the fact that it was...
No, I think the Ireland games in particular, because it meant so much more for a lot of different reasons. We all know Ireland, country, family, the whole thing. It meant so much to so many people, and because the spirit was so good, it meant so much to us collectively as a group. We were so tight. Any kind of individual kind of mistake, personally anyway, which I felt our performances weren't at the level that they should have been. Yeah, I found that tough. Particularly, I say the last qualifying campaign for Ireland under Brian, I almost felt as if I kind of let Brian down a little bit. My performances weren't good enough the last qualifying campaign, not the level that they should have been. My legs were going a little bit, to be honest. It wasn't a case of a lack of application or anything like that. Just physically mobility, just couldn't get around the pitch and influence the game.
And were you aware of that at the time? Was that?
I was a little bit. And you try and modify a game. I should have, in all honesty, I should have retorted the campaign before. I seriously thought about it.
Really?
Had a conversation. Yeah, I nearly jumped, but didn't. Spoke to Brian and decided, no, I'll carry on, and maybe
he obviously, if the fact that he's playing, he's obviously saying to you, here, listen, give it another bash, I need you.
Yeah, he was keen for me to carry on. It's not something which is easy to walk away from the Ireland scene. It means so much, you know what I mean? Like I said, I was so fortunate. It's not easy to step away from. I understand, lads, you kind of, people say, they're hanging on, but I can understand it, particularly in the ordnance setup. It means so much. But on reflection, I should have made the decision to walk a campaign before. We had good options there. Dunny was around there playing well. We had another couple of options in. Yeah, it was the wrong decision to hang around for another qualifying campaign because my performances weren't good enough. But yeah, boy and boy, as they say.
Yeah. Take this in the way it's meant, like the fact that your career is littered with leadership roles and captaincy roles. I would have thought, because I mean, you were saying 98, you were maybe 4 or 5 years on the Irish scene at that stage. That Croatia.
I can't remember. No, 96 I came
99
in.
actually was the Croatia game.
Yeah, that's right. We missed that. Well, it was the Macedonia, wasn't? We should have again. I don't know. That's when we'd qualified, hadn't we? And we conceded in injury time in Macedonia. They drew the game, and that threw us into the playoff game against Turkey, which we lost on the away goals. Drew 1-0 at home and lost. So that's how close was. But the Macedonia game, we were there. We'd actually qualified in injury time. You know, the game was over. They forced the corner kick. Don't know if you remember. They scored directly from the corner, and that was it. We were there, and then we went. So all of those things as well. The Belgium game, playoff, and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's still there, like, you know. So I generally, it's why I'll never write a book, because I couldn't go there and keep.
Really?
Yeah, no chance.
Just it hurts too much almost.
Yeah, not hurts in terms of like breaking down in tears, but just get angry, get bad form, like, you know what I mean, and just don't like talking about it too much, and certainly couldn't sit down and go through in any detail and put it in print. Now,
is there anybody you could talk to at the time? Like, that's what I was getting at with the leadership thing, that you would have been, I'm sure people would have been looking at you as one of the leaders of the team at that stage too. Was there anyone you felt you could chat about that? Like, it can be a pretty lonely place, I'm assuming.
No, that part of the game, I know it's kind of at the moment, it's kind of in the news a little bit, players with the mental side of the game, and kind of a lot of, even Danny Rose on the paper there this morning talking about he's suffered with depression of football and stuff like that. But no, that wasn't an issue at the time. Like, you know, I wouldn't have burdened anybody with that type of stuff. Like, you just kind of deal with yourself and get on. And yeah, whether it's a captain's role or leadership role, a senior player, you try and be as positive an influence around the place. Look, I wasn't walking around the place with a big chin on the floor.
Well, you were reading Ulysses.
No, that was probably. Jesus, I didn't finish it. I've got to be honest with you.
Nobody has, Kenny, I understand.
No, yeah. No, generally speaking, yeah, you push those things to the side. You be as positive as you can. The team dynamic is so important within the squad. I was always very much aware of that. But yeah, in your quiet moments and stuff, yeah, those kind of thoughts kind of creep in. But yeah, I've tried to box them off as best I can the last kind of 12 years and just kind of stay away from them. So that bloody ball coming in,
laundry bag.
That ball. That's where it started it all off.
And it's just the we're not going to sort of dwell on it any longer. I can tell that there's a pain involved in it, but it, like, the capacity normally to rationalise these things after you retire, and particularly after a bit of a remove after you retire, that normally players will say, oh yeah, well look, things could have been a bit better, but ultimately I'm sort of delighted with my lot. But it certainly seems
that's what you should do, really. And I suppose I've tried to do that as best I can, because nobody likes to hear he's such a man, he had a good career, what's he all? Yeah, so I can understand that a little bit. So, you know, I wouldn't put it out there too much, but something I can't get away from. It kind of happened. It's probably what I'm a little bit in terms of me coaching, a bit of coaching that I've done. I'd be very kind of analytical, be very detailed in terms of what I do.
I would have thought it was a huge help, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, just for that reason, because over the course of my career, I came to realise the importance of just a small amount of detail makes a huge amount of difference. Even on the biggest stage of all, qualifying, World Cup, whatever it is, the small minutiae that you talk about on the training pitch, even at a lower level, still kind of matters even at the very highest level, and matters to a huge extent. So yeah, that kind of, I suppose, in the back of me, almost a subconscious thing, that kind of drives me a little bit in terms of the bit of coaching that I do, that I'd be a little bit in terms of attention to detail, probably a little bit, maybe too much, but I can't get away for those reasons. That's what kind of drives it a little bit. I need to have things done, I need to be organised. I need to have the players organised. My responsibility to do that, because otherwise, I know from a personal point of view what the kind of ramifications are.
I don't know. I would have thought writing a book would have been a helpful experience in that case.
No, not cathartic almost.
No. Well, not if verbally having these conversations aren't to go by.
As in talking about it now, it's not helping. No,
not really. No. I've got to be honest.
Sorry
with
about
that. The ball. It's Kevin Cavan's fault.
We blame the ball. Everything. It all comes back to Kevin Cavan, Kenny. That's the short story. I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of publishers that are watching this morning that are thinking, Let's get Kenny's number and give him a shout and see if we can get something going here. Thanks for being so honest. We'll not press you on it anymore for now.
I don't know where that came. We haven't talked about that in the team meeting, where we? That never came up, did it?
We talked about Peter Stringfellow. We talked about
good Adrian, you're good.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah. You got me on the back foot there, Adrian, didn't he? Then he went in for the kill. Owen, did you notice that?
Right, on that note, here's what's coming up between now and probably just after 9 o'clock or thereabouts. Keep your comments coming in, by the way, on the hashtag OTBAM, or drop in your comments on the Facebook page or on YouTube. So we're going to get stuck into the sports pages in just a few minutes. There's some interesting stuff on the back pages. And as I've just alluded to, Kenny's been delving just inside the front pages as well. So we might bring you a bit of a flavour of what's happening there as well. That's upcoming very shortly. Craig Breen has been sending us some pretty cool video from Sardinia, where the World Rally Championship has had its latest stop, and it's into the second stage today. I mean, the first stage proper, really, I think, by all accounts. And if you're a motorsport fan, or indeed if you're not, I recommend that you stay tuned for that a little bit later on. That is an Off the Ball exclusive coming your way at about 10 past 8 or thereabouts. Owen's been in conversation with Paul Broderick. Owen, give us the cliff notes on that one.
Very interesting stuff. So we sat down with him yesterday on Stephen Cluxton, which I hadn't actually planned on talking to him about, and then it seemed so obvious when he was talking about it that he's actually one of the best placed people to talk about Stephen Cluxton, because Carlow clearly had a very well educated game plan to go against the Dubs last year to try and stop the Dubs, and we'll hear it in the interview later on, but Jason Sherlock is key to Stephen Cluxton's calls, as in he's the person who's trying to relay information from that area of the pitch back to the midfielders to try and tell them what way Cluxton is going to go with kickouts. So like at these intervals, you would have Sherlock running onto the pitch and he would just say a number to Cluxton, and Cluxton would relay just a number out to the pitch, and Broderick was trying to decipher, is this a number of a player, is this an actual code? And the level of intuition that goes into the Dublin thought around these numbers is very, very hard to decipher, as opposed to the way
they're like line-out calls almost, by the sounds of things.
Exactly, yeah. So it's an interesting element of it. That they don't, like the code words they use are numbers when it comes to Cluxton's kickouts, which I hadn't heard before. Maybe
never heard that before.
Maybe it was completely charted territory, and I was like, this is a very interesting call. Tell us more about this.
I am a millennial, so I haven't heard this before.
Yeah, exactly. But hopefully it's new information to most people.
I haven't heard it before, and I'm not a millennial, so let's take that as a good sign.
2 people is good enough for me.
Also coming up later on, we're going to talk about the World Cup with Kenny and get his thoughts on. I know we watched a little bit of the England game last night, 2-0 against Costa Rica, so we're going to talk to Kenny about that and on. And the Irish women's team, of course, in action as well against Norway, the first game tonight, and then the return leg will be back in Stavanger on Tuesday upcoming. So we'll be having a little bit of a conversation about that as well, and that is all to come. So do keep your comments coming in. We're delighted to have you with us on this bright and breezy, beautiful Friday morning. Keep your comments coming in, and we'll bring those to you over the course of the morning. But we're going to start with the back pages, Owen, I think, and I'm going to kick things off by all accounts, because you're nodding at me, so I'm taking that as good to go, Kenny.
That's the debts there, did you,
absolutely.
Adrian?
I've nothing was the look there. Right, it's 8:05 in this Friday morning. Here's a look at what's happening on the back pages. Starting with the Irish Independent this morning, it is watch your back, Johnny. Cheika warns his former number 10 of Carbery threat to Ireland place, is the main headline here from Rory O'Connor, who is in Brisbane ahead of the first test tomorrow morning, which is just after 11 a.m. Irish time. And a picture of Johnny Sexton there with the little yellow bib on him, which indicates that he is not going to be playing in the game. He's amongst the subs tomorrow. So Joey Carbery gets his position, and Michael Cheika knows a thing or two about having to drop Johnny Sexton, and was pretty interesting in that this morning. He says that he would fairly regularly give him a bit of it. When he had to tell Sexton, he would have coached him in his early days when he was coming through at Leinster. So obviously at that time there would have been lots of conversations about, well, look at Johnny, you're not starting this week. And he said he used to leave him with Sexton would leave him with a flea in his ear.
Oh, is that right?
Even from a young age.
He would have been happy, would have let him know.
22, 23 probably at that point.
Yeah, doesn't surprise in terms of what Johnny's achieved through his career. Doesn't surprise that kind of mentality was always existed, even at that young age.
Coleman urges Irish sides not to sell stars cheaply. So this is on the back of Graham Burke, who's been heavily linked with a move to Preston. They're talking about the fees, obviously, that Coleman himself went to Everton from Sligo for 60k. He's kind of saying fees need to move well beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely right, man. At the very least, if a club's going to, I'll be disappointed to see Graham go, because at the end of the day, he's got his Ireland opportunity off the back of his performances from Shamrock Rovers this season. That shouldn't be forgotten. So this kind of old adage, you got to go over to prove yourself at the highest level before you can really be considered. that's kind of Graham's kind of disproved that theory. But I understand if it's a personal ambition to go back across the water. But at the very least, the League of Ireland clubs need to be compensated to the level
properly.
That they should be. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Seamus Coleman's fee. I don't know what add-ons were in there, but it's like, I mean, if they didn't get significantly more eventually than 60 grand. It's a disgrace,
I think there were other add-ons and kick-ons. I think, in fact, even down to some of his junior clubs after that, it wasn't just Sligo the benefit. But still, when you're talking about the marquee fee being 60k, it's pretty grim. 300k is the figure that's been linked with him, which is certainly a bit more realistic. I know you lads were talking during the week about when are we going to get the first €1 million League of Ireland player.
Well, I remember doing a pro licence a few years ago now. I remember somebody came in for a talk. He was the Latvian manager, an English fellow. Was it Latvia or Lithuania he was in charge of?
Right.
And he put a thesis together in terms of like a comparison between the League of Ireland and the domestic league over in Latvia, kind of very similar, even on a smaller scale over there. And he listed the last kind of 15 to 20 players who'd left Latvia for significant money and joined other European sides, even in England. I think Marian Parhar's maybe was the most expensive. Went to play for Southampton. He went for close to €1 million. It was €1 million at the time, but there was some chunky fees then.
How long ago was that?
So it is some time ago, but it kind of blew me away because it was like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These were the type of fees that you were getting, and he was saying, no, we insist on getting. Obviously, there's other factors come into criteria in terms of getting players on longer contracts, like Lads League of Ireland, 1 year rolling contracts. The contract finishes, the clubs aren't in a position to demand a certain fee as opposed to somebody's on a 2-3 year contract, so it strengthens your position at a club. So there's the argument, get players on longer contracts, but that's a bigger commitment financially. Clubs might be in a position to do that. I understand that. So it's kind of, you're kind of chasing your tail constantly.
Almost a proof of purchase now with the number of players that have gone over there that have, I mean, at least proven themselves to be way beyond 60k. Because Seamus Coleman is not even that long ago, and I mean, there's players before him.
Seamus Coleman has been one of the best players in his position in the world, in the world.
But the point is that he's not an outlier. Like, there's a whole bunch of players that went before him that came directly from the League of Ireland that succeeded up to a very high level. There are players that have followed since, and a lot of them, Preston seems to be the feeder club almost now. But there's enough evidence to suggest that these players, the actually value, needs to be much more significant than that.
I'd agree with that, but I would also say, in the current, like, obviously not judging for inflation now, but in the current financial landscape, it would be one hell of a miss if a League of Ireland player went to the UK for €1 million. Like, that has to be an outrageous talent that all the scouts that set up shop in Ireland and try and scout these guys from a young age, that they've missed an open goal there if there's somebody who's worth €1 million for the League of Ireland. And that's just being realistic. Like, Pahar's was one hell of a miss if he went for that transfer fee. Obviously, they just didn't do their work right when they were scouting the Latvian leagues.
I think that it's not always a miss, actually. And I think that Graham Burke is almost proof of that he had obviously been over there and things just didn't work out for him. And so at that stage of his career, this is what he needed to do. So it wasn't that he was missed. He's actually, and frequently that is the path. Like, you know yourself, the number of players that go over to academies is enormous, and loads of them are coming back to play in the League of Ireland. Yeah,
not necessarily because technically they're not the required level, or they're not
there might be a whole range of factors.
Usually, emotional stuff. There's a load of stuff kind of off-field stuff can knock you sideways. You need to come back and just go again. Just clear your head, find your confidence again, a little bit of maturity as well from a footballing point of view, and also as a person as well. And you can step up again, which clearly Graham is doing. But I'd love to see that. So that money's got to be coming back into the clubs first and foremost, into the league, and obviously the kind of ripple effect of that. And so we are talking about stadiums and the need for investment and stuff. This isn't only the answer, but certainly more money coming into the football clubs on a regular basis. When you do sell your talent, you certainly get value for money, because it's galling to see some of the players. Seamus is probably a good example as any going across. And I think the players themselves would like to see it, because players have a real attachment, I think, to the clubs over here in Ireland that they live. So it's not a case of the player thinking, I don't want the club getting the money, I want it in my pocket type thing. I think genuinely the players would love to see the clubs compensated as well for the part they play in their development as a player. So hopefully we'll see more of it.
The other thing that's here is just the pairings. Obviously, Rory McIlroy paired with Jordan Spieth and Phil Mickelson. We'll come to that a bit later. I know Kenny's going to actually tell us who his tips are for the US Open, which starts next week.
Never reveal. Not before the tournament.
The last time we were in here talking golf,
you pulled one out of me. You went fishing.
You didn't give me anything.
Bit like that Ireland story at the start of this show.
Sunday,
You went fishing.
I got a text saying, "Oi, oi." Paul Casey is definitely one of them.
Paul Casey, was Paul Casey, but that's a story as well. He rented himself out a place prior to the tournament in August and he couldn't done his back in the bed, like, which seemed a really trivial thing. But I thought, bloody, and he didn't never gone for 2 days. He put a great run together the last
last day was unbelievable. Yeah,
he's one I consider. Like, I want to tell you, he's one I consider again for the US Open. I think he's got the game to play well around there.
As long as he doesn't have a bad back.
I did the same myself last Saturday morning. I was due to be going to play the Paul McShane golf day last Sunday and I put my back out.
Wearing coppers the night before?
Some
classic Adrian.
Do you want to talk about the Peter Cunningham piece?
So it's the next step in Tyrone versus Sean Cavanagh. To be fair, it's you're obviously going to lead with the headline regarding Sean Cavanagh here because it's such a great story, really, and it's had a lot of legs so far. To be fair to Peter Cunningham, his column today is not about Sean Cavanagh. It is just the most striking thing from it. So I might just read out exactly what he said about it. It's literally 3 paragraphs. So he says, "For me, it was a pity Sean wasn't more vocal when he was inside the camp because it is much easier to affect change from within. Sean is entitled to his opinion, of course, and he's entitled to express it. But I think he could have been conveyed in a little less divisive manner. To see a wedge driven between our most successful manager and one of the greatest players Tyrone has ever produced only serves the interests of those outside the county." So I don't want to say here that Peter Cunningham is going after Sean Cavanagh today, but it is the next thing that's been said.
Sounds like it kind of is. Like the context of this is that Sean Cavanagh last week was very critical. So he just retired from Tyrone.
Yeah, I heard the original story.
He was very critical of Mickey Hart's tactics, particularly around, and I mean many would say that that's fairly justifiable commentary, that they were pretty badly exposed in the semi-finals against Dublin last year, that this was kind of a reasonable enough sort of thing to do. And he has been actually outspoken enough. I don't know what sort of relationship himself and Mickey Hart have. I've always suspected that it's not great, because I think Cavanagh, even when he was a player, would say things at times that I often felt was sort of rubbing Mickey Hart up the wrong way. And I think he's totally, he's now a pundit, so he's no longer a player as part of that Tyrone setup. Like, he's not doing his job if he's thinking. John Giles was at, we did a Euro 88 special at Vicar Street last night. Brilliant show, by the way. Check it all out on offtheball.com. But John Giles was talking about his initial route into punditry, and he spoke about the idea that he had to be honest. He had to call it like it was. Like, there's no point in him sitting there and going, well, I know this thing or I think this thing, but I'm not going to say that due to some sort of a loyalty to whoever. He's got to.
But likewise, I think it's fair comment as well. What Owen has read out there. If the management says if these comments were opinions weren't conveyed when he was a member of the squad, I'm sure if he's a strong personality, one of more experienced players in the squad, I'm sure he probably did. So I've no problem with that. If you made these views known at the time and tried to facilitate that change while he was a player and improve things, and it was coming from the right place, to step outside and say, he said, that's absolutely fine. But if the insinuation there, which seems to be, well, it's just the first thing we've heard about it.
I remember him saying stuff like that public. Maybe he wasn't. Nobody knows what he was doing internally. Only the people who were involved internally. But I remember him saying stuff like that while he was a player publicly.
The point is here that Peter Cunningham and Sean Cavanagh only overlapped for a few years. The age difference here is around a decade. So when he's saying, for me, it was a pity Sean wasn't more vocal when he was inside the camp, either A, Sean Cavanagh was young when Peter Cunningham was still a Tyrone player, which is the truth, or B, he's heard second-hand information, Sean actually never voiced his opinions.
Well, Gavin Devlin came out afterwards and said that we've had loads of Tyrone captains over the years, I think Canavan included, who would have been very vocal internally, but that Sean never said. Why didn't he mention anything? So I'm assuming that's a reaction to that line.
Presumably, so he's buying that line as the full and complete truth. And I'm not saying it's not. It could well be. We don't know what was going on. We don't know how vocal Sean Cavanagh really was here. I don't know. I think it's hard because it's your first step into punditry. But it's also the most important time in your punditry career because you have the most relevant information out of anybody in your early days because you've literally just stepped out of the camp.
Diminishing returns, like that's.
It's not easy. There's still an obvious attachment between the player and the county. There, he's only. How long has he been? Has he walked away from the county?
Just last year.
Yeah, it's his first year as a pundit.
That's not tough. And like I said, that's an honest appraise of what he thinks of the team, and it's coming from the right place. I think it's fair. And if he was kind of offering those opinions during this time in a positive manner within the squad and trying to influence things and make things better, I think that probably strengthens his case. But like I said, I'm on the outside.
I think they're saying that he wasn't, but I mean, ultimately, that's fair play to him. The more that he gives as a pundit, the better, as far as I'm concerned. That's my take on it. Right, the Times Ireland, for what it's worth, Kenny.
Pretty selfish, you don't want me saying so.
Ireland are expecting to win 3-0. Says Michael Cheika. There's, needless to say, Michael Cheika on the eve of a test against a country that he used to coach in. He's pretty interesting.
Yeah, but that's great. What's that comment meant to be? That's almost like little mind games, as if
exactly
they expect. But that's great. That's the mindset. Exactly what I'm sure that is the mindset in the Ireland team, and it should be, because we're playing that well. We are that good individually, collectively. We're that well prepared. Why shouldn't we be going there with that particular mindset?
Conversely, he's in the Australian dressing room saying these bleeps are over here thinking they're going to beat us 3-0.
But to throw that out there for me, I'll be taking that as a positive. For me, that's almost 1-0 up for the Ireland team, for him to come out. I'm not saying he's scared, but he's clearly concerned with the quality of the Irish team that's coming over. If he's throwing that kind of statement up to kind of rattle us, I'd love to see the Ireland manager players come out and say, yeah, we are expecting to win this game 3-0. That's how much we rate ourselves. That's how much I rate my teammate who's going to be on my left and the one onto me right. Yeah, we do feel as if we're that good.
You've rarely seen an Australian voluntarily put themselves in the back foot. That's what he's doing here. So I guess you're right. It's one up for Ireland, I think.
Absolutely.
It's good mass stereotyping there on.
Well,
I mean, it may well be accurate in this case, but
it's completely accurate.
Coleman aims to be sharper, writes John Fallon up here as well. Seamie Coleman's been out and about in the media in the last while. And Jackson close to French deal, writes Kieran O'Rahlig here. Paddy Jackson could be set to join Stuart Olding in France. He closes in on a move to Perpignan, who are just been promoted on a large budget, as Kieran O'Rahlig writes, to their return to the top 14. So perhaps Paddy Jackson is about to secure himself a new rugby contract. The Irish Examiner, meanwhile, up to speed, asks Ronan O'Gara on the Johnny Sexton, Joey Carbery dynamic here. So more reflections on, and I mean, nobody better to be writing on it, on the Joey Carbery at 10 thing. It's like writing about the disaster of the last World Cup and how we didn't have enough players to backfill positions when players went down. And so, like, we are very reliant on Johnny Sexton, and the idea that we'd have a player that we believe hasn't actually yet had the proper exposure really to his position, and that's kind of, I mean, the big factor obviously in his move to Munster as well. What's he going to be like as a 10? Giving him cockpit hours in that position in a full test like that.
I would have thought it's essential.
He's doing it across the front row. He's doing it in other positions as well. Like, it's prudent stuff. It might be a player management thing in terms of the amount of minutes obviously the players have played this season, but if it's a consequence of that, it's a great consequence that we can get second tier players. Ultimately, they're not first 15 players. Exposure at that high level. Yeah,
I just think it's absolutely essential. He's obviously got huge ability, young lad. I've obviously seen a little bit of him play, but I suppose apart from his technical attributes, there's almost the kind of mental side as well, in terms of how can he cope with against top quality opposition in kind of a more of a pressurised environment. I know these are friendlies to a certain extent, but that friendlies probably don't exist in rugby union. So going down to Australia, playing 3 test matches down there and throwing him in that kind of environment, he's going to learn a huge amount about the player, about this the psyche of the player, the psychology, the mental strength to complement those obvious attributes for rugby attributes, technical attributes, which he has. We'll fly through a couple of these. This is the Irish Times here, and it's rugby all the way. Jerry Thornley in Brisbane. Schmidt wary of Australian flair in the first test. So Joe Schmidt, in reply to Michael Cheika, is very much talking him up, and you can see Cheika amongst his players there. Cheika in vintage form as his flattery tactics hit the target. He's got a bit of the Mourinho, says Michael Cheika. It doesn't matter what he says. People always say that miserable. Not that miserable, surely, is he?
Some sort of mind games at play is the general sense of that. You're a brave man, Joe. Michael Cheika puts pressure on Schmidt over Carbery pick, writes the Irish Daily Mail this morning, and more reflections there on the GA season from Clare's John Conlon. And the Irish News we can take a look at. I mean, this is the big story of the week. It's the Westmeath Armagh game. Brandon Crossan writing about this. It got a bit fiery last year when they met in the qualifiers, and ultimately Westmeath went out by, I think, about 5 points on that occasion.
You confident?
You know my levels of confidence when it comes to Westmeath, particularly this year. No, I'm not at all confident. They're going to get beaten, I would almost guarantee it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, to turn around the players, and Kelly, the manager, is talking about they're very much the walking wound and this sort of stuff, but there's inexplicably a bunch of other players who just aren't involved in the panel, and I wonder why that is. Hopefully maybe some of those rationales might sort of come out over the next while. Finally, just the Racing Post this morning, just in with a shout there. Del Potro can give 1-8 Nadal, a serious test in the semi-finals as the Roland Garros last 4 approaches. That's it from me on those.
On the back of the Heralds, they're going with the dubs. Focus is key for Dublin. Injured O'Sullivan, guarded against complacency and big on humility. You've also got Coleman talking about Declan Rice, who's made for captaincy. He's got leadership qualities that you were talking about there, Kenny. Declan Rice, according to Seamus Coleman. An interesting lead on the back of the Mirror. They're kind of targeting all those Manchester United fans out there. Dread for Red Fred. Casemiro tackle leaves United sweating on new £52 million stars fitness. So a seemingly, it's hard to make out from the pictures here on the back of the Mirror, but a seemingly innocuous challenge from Casemiro on Fred. Although he's at full stretch.
Yeah.
It's a slide tackle. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with slide tackling in training.
Are they locking shoulders? They're
not locking shoulders. It's kind of hard to make out on screen right here, but you can see he makes contact with the ball. It's full contact training session. You're getting ready for the World Cup. I mean, what's wrong with a slide tackle?
The report that I read was that Casemiro had landed awkwardly on Fred's ankle. But I mean,
Casemiro is literally on the ground here. Fred is standing up.
Any awkward landing at all. Have you seen much of this guy, Kenny? It was actually, I mean, I hope he's going to play because I think that it adds another dimension to the Brazil games to actually see what United are getting next season. Have you seen much of him? Or
I've seen a little bit of him play. Look, I'll be interested in where Marino sees him the fit into that Manchester United midfield. We've spoken about it before, whether he's going to commit himself to that kind of midfield 3. Next season. This lad to me looks as if he can play almost that holding one and maybe as a number 8, more of an advanced midfield position. We spoke about the need for improving in there in terms of the likes of Herrera not being good enough, need better quality in there. And over that he's been linked as well, which is interesting to see if that's got any legs in it. If that was the case, I think you'd have to put question marks over the future of Pogba if he was bringing players in the quality of Fred and Verratti, trying to incorporate Pogba and Matic as well into that midfield would be near impossible. So yeah, but it's what they needed, United. It's what they needed all years. Centre midfield has been a problem for them. He's obviously recognised, he knows Marino, so he's doing the right thing. He's trying to strengthen that area of the pitch really badly, he needs to do.
On the back of the Irish Daily Star then, it's Coleman's guilt trip, reads the big headline here, and 2 bullet points here that say, I could have made a difference versus Danes and I could have helped Koeman keep his job. You've also got the Fred story there, and €60 million to Nab Ace, so that's Nabil Fekir, the French international who's on his way to Liverpool by the sounds of things. On the back of the Sun then, it's more of this Ireland's disappointment here. I'll be watching on TV thinking that could have been us. World Cup heartache, what a shame. S-E-V-A-M.
I like that.
Yeah, it's good. So just
you won't be watching that opening game of the tournament now. That Russia versus Saudi Arabia.
Oh
dear!
Game of the tournament.
Most of the population won't be watching that. You won't be tuning in for that, will you?
Well, the adrenaline rush of the World Cup having finally arrived will get you through that one, no?
God, no. Even the big build-up, there's about an hour and a half build-up to it. It's like torture, even more so. I won't be watching that. In fact, I looked at the fixtures Friday, they're not great either. Iran playing Friday.
Friday, not Spain, Portugal, no?
Friday, maybe. Yeah, Friday night, yeah, maybe. Although I'll be in Dublin, I might be at a game. I might be out watching the games.
Well, you've really
kept me out for the first weekend of the World Cup.
you've really lit the dynamite of my excitement for the World Cup.
But is that not a general thing? I mean, it really seems as if it's been a real slow burn. I don't know, maybe it's just Mumble isolated from the majority of the population.
I think once it starts and the sort of dynamics start to play
but usually there's a little bit of that, you know what I mean, momentum leading up to a big story, there's a bit of a buzz around people talking, a bit of chitter-chat around the place, but...
To be fair, Russia-Saudi Arabia is the worst opening game in the history of the World Cup, no question about that.
2 solid democratic nations right there.
Yeah. The one thing that has...
Another conversation, you're right.
Like you talk about the slow burn of excitement that always comes with the World Cup that we mightn't have seen. The other thing that slow burns its way into public consciousness every single year is like, you know what? England might have a chance. And that's actually the story on the back of the UK titles this morning. From Rashford with love. England head for Russia in good heart after a clinical warm-up win. They beat Costa Rica 2-0 last night. Marcus Rashford.
It's a bad play on words there, Alan. You could come up with something better than that.
They went with
Rashford, Russia, or is that it? Is that the only common denominator?
Alliteration, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tiny bit better on the Daily Telegraph, but they clearly didn't see each other's back pages because they went with the same a similar picture and a pretty similar headline. To Russia with hope, they say. Rashford's stunning strike gives England the perfect send-off, they say. It was an unbelievable goal. A perfect send-off. That's all suggesting to me that the press in England, the public in England, they're just starting to think, you know what?
Well, they're not. It's interesting because obviously, I live over there and it has been noticeable, deleted to this tournament for the first time, that expectation level is just...
Gareth Southgate has sort of pulled the pin on that and said, listen, let's
I think he has played it very well, Southgate. I have been impressed with how he's taken the job on, but just a general feeling amongst the journalists in particular, they're the ones who stoke at back pages, bum. But there has generally been a bit of a, do you know what, let's just take a step back. Yeah. We know we're not going to win it, but it's a young squad there, some good young players. The dynamic seems to be good, and just less pressure on the shoulders of the player. You sense that even listening to the players talking and stuff, just sense it's a little bit different this time around. And whereas it isn't perfect, the team, for me it's still a very dangerous team. When you kind of forget about that kind of defensive unit and look a bit higher up the pitch, particularly in those forward areas, they got some real talent there, just in terms of the energy, pace, dynamism in the team. It's the type of team that'll really terrify a number of the teams, even the bigger teams over there in the later stages of the tournament.
The one thing just to point out as well, because I know I'd be gutted if I missed this, a lot of the newspapers are advertising their wall charts for tomorrow and Sunday. So if you're going to get your wall chart, Kenny, this is the weekend to do it. You'll get a nice big one on one of the Sundays as well.
There's some good stuff out there, Kenny, let's face it.
I wouldn't know, Adrian, I'll take your word.
You've never had a wall chart?
Oh, I did back in the day. I'm thinking me ma's like growing up, but oh no, I do. A bit of nostalgia there. They were great. I do remember every game going in and filling in the chart.
Sort of filling out the scores. I used to sort of get very enthusiastic for the first round, maybe first round of games, maybe the second round of games, and then after a while you'd start filling them in again, maybe around the semi-finals. Like a
big blank space in the middle of the tournament. No, I was pretty relentless with it, I must admit. Yeah, what was part of the kind of
Well, you'd have been looking up Airtel, Kenny, as well at the time, you know what I mean, trying to get the results and stuff.
Is it unacceptable to do it as an adult? I think not. I think it's completely fine, isn't it?
Worrying, I think, a better word.
Yeah, I definitely didn't do it for Euro 2016 or anything.
One other story that we wanted to bring to your attention was the statement that was released. This is the front of the Irish Daily Mirror, that was released by Katie Taylor yesterday in relation to the shooting at Bray Boxing Club. As you can see, the statement there in full on offtheball.com, covered in front of the Irish Daily Mirror, as it is in a lot of the newspapers. Katie's agony for shot Bobby, boxer breaks silence over killing and attempted murder of her dad at gym. So I think there's just been so much stuff written and spoken about in relation to Katie Taylor around this shooting at the Bray Boxing Club this week. She wanted to put on record, I guess, her own thoughts and her own position in terms of her dad, who obviously was shot as part of this attack at Bray Boxing Club during the week. And, you know, she talks about the fact that they have been estranged for the last number of years, that and that dynamic continues, I guess, but obviously expressing her condolences as well to the victim of that shooting, the fatality from that shooting as well. So that, needless to say, dominates a lot of the front pages today. Keep your comments coming into us on the hashtag OTBAM. Drop them in on the YouTube channel or on Facebook as well. There was one thing that we did, a couple of things we wanted to bring you. Kenny mentioned the production meeting a little bit earlier and how we'd sort of, it's really the process where we all sort of pick up various bits of stories and say, listen, maybe we should talk about this thing. Kenny had a whole bunch of interesting stuff that we might try and rattle through pretty quickly. One of them was here, Louis, I've quit X Factor for good, was absolutely one of them.
If only that were true, Adrian. If only
Come on
that
now,
were
Kenny.
true.
Don't back away on me now.
That's about the 5th time, is it? He's
you think
leaving that show.
This is just a bit of Michael Cheika stuff going on? Is
yeah, mind games.
Longest running judge leaves the show after 13 years, Kenny. I mean, this looks like pretty solid stuff. It's here in black and white.
Let's hope
You're a fan, obviously, of X Factor, are you? Do you watch it?
I'm not actually, no. I haven't watched it for some years, but even less a fan of some of the judges, I'd have to admit.
The glory days are long gone in the X Factor, really.
long gone.
The Wagner was probably the last season, and I know he didn't win it, but that was kind of like the last season that really kind of captured the public imagination, when that was everybody's Facebook status on a Sunday night. It was like, oh, it's a disgrace that Jedward got through in that particular head-to-head.
The other thing that I know was catching your attention was shots of Peter Stringfellow's arse. God rest him, but we're probably not going to go too deep on that one.
Peter Stringfellow, hey?
There was
God rest him.
There was something else about Russell Crowe here. I can't find it. I'm going to end up having to struggle through that, so I won't. We'll leave it, but we'll come back to that, Kenny.
I'm in the minority on that one. I'm in the minority on that one now, but stand my ground.
One last thing. Conor McGregor posted a pretty interesting Instagram story last night. He subsequently deleted it just 6 minutes later. Racing yachts. The order of the day here. He was, don't know where he was actually. Where was he, Tommy?
Racing yachts! You're back! Come on! What, Tommy?
Stop, man. Got a roll up cigarette I see there under his on his ear.
Allegedly.
A rolled up cigarette, Kenny. That's what he's got going on
Right,
there.
Adrian. No need to beat the man up over that. Tricolour there in the background.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I mean, you're joking about it being the Shannon. It could potentially. I mean, the weather that we're having here at the minute. I don't know how many of those flash speedboats with the old tricolour that are going up and down Loughree, but there we go.
I'm sure it wasn't the Shannon. I'm sure it was California or somewhere like that.
He's a modest man.
You can get rolled up cigarettes.
He's a modest man with a lot to be modest about, isn't that the Churchill saying?
Oh, 100%. He has a lot to be modest about, doesn't he?
Tension.
One comment in here from Kevin Daniel Kilban, I think it is, on our Facebook page. Has Kenny been raiding Dave McIntyre's wardrobe? He asks.
You know, I travel light when I come to Dublin. Very light.
So what,
this is why you can't see me trainers, to be honest. The dog got hold of me trainers last night.
So look there, do you want to put them up on the...
Nah, I won't put them up.
Bad,
He's ripped them. No, he's ripped the back out of him. Can you see that? Oh, and you probably see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look, but...
What sort of a dog have you got?
He's a big one. He's a lump.
What sort of brand is he? He's a big one.
I don't know. Some kind of mongrel.
All right, it's why does that not surprise me? That's 8:32 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. Lots of comments coming in, so keep them coming in. We'll bring those to Kenny in a little while. But if you've been watching this week, you'll have noticed that Craig Breen has been dropping us a few little videos to let us know how he's getting on. The latest stop in the World Rally Championships is Sardegna, and he's been dropping some videos, let us know how he's going on. Yesterday was the first stage of the rally, but it's a bit of a ceremonial thing, I think, by all accounts. Didn't have the best day, but the real business sort of begins today. So a couple of nice little pieces that Craig has sent back for the exclusive to Off the Ball. So this is just for you. Here's the first one. Check it out.
Pretty miserable start to the rally, unfortunately, tonight. We had a stall inside the super special stage, the short spectator stage tonight. I don't know, it was the fault of the car or something, but pulled the handbrake and everything cut out, and it took about 6 seconds to restart. So lo and behold, we dropped 6 seconds in the stage. So a bit unfortunate, but ready to start the rally proper tomorrow morning, and we'll give it hammer and tongs to see what happens.
Not bad.
That's Craig Breen there in Sardegna. It's pretty good, isn't it? It's pretty dreamy and sort of...
lovely pictures there.
Get into a bit of that, Kenny.
I'm not big on me motor. Formula One, I wouldn't watch.
You're a regular in Sardegna, though. You've a
not regular. One night only, as I explained to you.
You've a villa out there. You bumped into some football royalty down there.
I didn't we didn't technically rub shoulders with them from a distance. Yeah, I think the German team we'd missed out on another major championships. Obviously, I was on the beach with my missus, and the German team were preparing for the finals. Wonder where that would have been. 2000. Where was the World Cup? can't remember. But the whole German national team were there, and there's a few of the kind of European players scattered around the place. Raoul was doing a few keepy-ups with he's young for a little 3 or 4 year old. Yeah, it's pretty impressive actually, to be honest with you. Yeah.
The scene,
4 year old, not Raoul.
The Calgary, the scene of the.
I didn't get to see the island. That's the only thing. You're lazy as. By the time the season ends, you know, it's one of them. Let's just go.
Out a bit.
Yeah, you feel. I look back and I think some of the places. I should have travelled a little bit more. I mean, I went to a couple of places. Went like Australia, you know, and Canada, and did travel and did. But a couple of places, even like Sardinia, beautiful island, but. You know, you check into the hotel, just don't leave the boundaries of there. Maybe to one of them, you want to switch off, just physically, maybe just relax and just do the simple stuff, like, you know what I mean? But
you're essentially there in work, though. Like, I know it's like it can be tiring, right? It's not like you're there to travel. Like that's I guess it's a strange regret to have that you didn't travel a bit more, but you know.
I'm not so much, I just didn't have the opportunity really. Maybe when I was really young, 18, 19, those couple of summers I spoke about, you know, filling the back of the car in London and coming back to Dublin and doing me bits around them. Maybe that was the time to maybe, I would have liked to have travelled.
Well, it's difficult when you live abroad. You always want to spend the time off that you have going back to see.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I was delighted to come home. I mean, I'll come back buzzing, like you say, see friends, catch up with people and all that. So before you know, you're back for pre-season. But I know it's now speaking to younger kids now around the place, and they're kind of so taking 6 months off, I'm gone. Asia seems to be a big thing, Southeast Asia. It would have appealed to me, that part of the world, to be honest. I would love to travel like South America. I mean, I would love to have started the bottom of South America and made me way.
It's not too late, Kenny.
All the way. It's far too late, Adrian.
Are you kidding me? Not at all. Listen, 46 is the new 30, so they say. Am I right? Am I about there?
47 soon.
Oh, that's way too late.
Right, Craig Breen also sent us this video. If you're into the little bits of technicality, the nice little detail, as Mr. Trapattoni might say. Here's some good stuff on the sort of tyres that Craig Breen is using.
So yeah, these are the tyres that we'll have, okay, not all of them, but this is the type of tyre that we'll be using this weekend. We've got 2 choices of compounds. The compound is basically the construction of the tyre, how soft and how hard it's made, obviously. So yeah, we've got a soft and a hard. The pattern of the tyre, obviously, on a gravel surface here, so the design is basically to sweep away the loose gravel and loose stones on the top of the road. So that's primarily what these grooves are for here. And then you've got an inner block here, which is more for stability in high speed. So the tyres are really reinforced well. The chances of getting a puncture are quite low, even though it does happen from time to time. We can generally speaking drive out over some of the big rocks and big stones you see on a rough rally like this. But that's about it. Obviously we regulate the tyre pressures given how long the stages are. If it's a shorter stage, we'll run with the tyre pressures quite high. If it's a longer stage, we'll run with the pressures a bit low, because naturally they go up and up as the stage goes on in relation to the temperature. So this rally is particularly tough for the tyres. It's really abrasive, and the surface is really hard in some places, so you have to be really careful with the wheel spin and how you protect your tyres, because it's a long loop, 60-70 k's at a time without any tyre change. So it's a tough one, and yeah, we have to look after these guys for the rest of the week.
Yeah, that's Craig Breen there talking about the tyres. Pretty interesting stuff, and Craig is going to be sending us some more of that good stuff just for the off-the-ball audience, so it's coming your way over the next little while as well, so keep an eye on him. We shall certainly be doing that. Keep your comments coming in as well. We're going to turn focus now to GAA. On Sunday, Carlow are going to face Laois in the Leinster football semi-final. Paul Broderick was sensational for them in their victory over Kildare. He finished with a total of 11 points as Carlow had if you remember, 100% shot completion. So yesterday he was named the PwC Player of the Month for May, and Owen caught up with him. Take a look.
Very welcome along to PwC headquarters, and I'm joined by the Player of the Month, Paul Broderick. Congratulations, Paul.
Thanks very much, Owen.
If you don't know Paul, you might recognise him from such things as the very top of the current standings in top scoring from this year's championship. You were also in the top 4 last year, and I was just doing a bit of research before coming to meet you this afternoon, and the only people who scored more than you last year were Conor McManus, Paul Gainey and Dean Rock. It's not bad company to be in.
Yeah, well, I suppose for us, in many cases the lads win the frees, and I have the easy job of putting them over. But I was thrilled to be in the company. Obviously, we would have preferred to win another game or two. We were close to Monaghan, and we would love to get over the line there. But it's nice, I suppose. It's nice to be up there.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess when you look at the counties that those lads are from, I guess every team needs a free taker, and I guess a lot of your scores would have come from frees and stuff like that. So it's great endorsement when you're up that high in the scoring charts of how well your county is doing.
Yeah, I suppose without having the 4 or 5 games, we mightn't have anybody up there.
Carlow versus Laois this weekend. We'll touch on this briefly. Like, it's going to be a very intriguing game. But from your perspective, it's probably more intriguing. Like, you're off school at the moment. You're a secondary teacher in Laois.
It's look, it's good banter the last couple of weeks. You know, young lads and girls in the school. And I'm involved in the football in the school as well. So, you know, it's been great crack. They all tell me there's no way we're going to beat them, and you know, I couldn't disagree with them in terms of they've beaten us twice this year. So, but yeah, no, it's all good natured, but good crack. Yeah.
And where you're from as well would be fairly close to the border as well, right?
Yeah, Carlow Town's only probably a mile from the Laois border, if even. So, and we'd socialise with a lot of the Laois lads, and we'd know them, would have gone to school with them and stuff like that. So, look, it's all in good humour, but I suppose it's an unusual situation that it wouldn't happen in many counties. Greg Cullen, who would be the closest Laois town to Carlow, is pretty much in Carlow Town. You can walk from Carlow Town, you just cross the river, and I suppose Greg Cullen will be one of the most successful Carlow clubs until they moved over, so it's a unique situation. Yeah.
You mentioned there a moment ago about having lost to Laois already twice this year, and also post the league final in Division 4 you've also lost Brendan Murphy as well, which was a huge talking point at the time. Now obviously, like, there's huge respect for Brendan in Carlow, but at the same time, is there a sense that having lost him gives you an added incentive, not out of kind of a dislike for Brendan or anything, but just in terms of having an extra cause, and you know, this whole idea that everything was against us at the start of the year and we've managed to do it all in spite of the fact that he's gone to the United States? Yeah, I suppose it was a blow. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a blow. Brendan came in, probably wasn't easy for him to do, came in and announced to the dressing room that he was going, you know, and that it was the right time for him and Kate to go, his fiancée, and you know, no one really begrudged him going, but I suppose for us a huge part of our game revolves around Brendan, so we knew that we had a point to prove that it, you know, that it isn't all about him, that you know, that we can perform as a team without him or without any one member. Like you said, it's not about Brendan individually, it's about if anyone left, like any of our top players, the likes of you look at Sean Murphy and Owen Root, who've come into midfield, and Sean Gannon, who's been doing some great fielding, like, as in those lads have really stood up in the absence of Brendan, you know, and so far, like in the Louth and Kildare game, they've been exactly what we've needed. You know, they've been the remedy we've needed. So you mentioned him going to the dressing room to announce that. I presume that was after a training session, and what was the mood like in the dressing room at that point?
It was a pretty sombre mood. Like,
did any of you expect it, actually?
No, well, maybe personally I didn't know about it. I didn't expect it, but especially I suppose because this is the first year we've become promoted, so you know, we were well used to people leaving panels, but not for specific reasons, like Brennan's, more so people becoming a bit disillusioned and going back to their clubs on different years, because I suppose maybe they weren't getting a game. If you're not getting a game for a losing team, you know, it's very easy to point fingers and blame. I suppose when you're part of a setup that has won a few games, it's easier to stick with it. So I suppose we weren't expecting anybody to drop off the panel for any particular reason. And when Brendan left, I think that was a Tuesday night, I could have it wrong, but that session and the session after that were, you know, there was a bit of a lull, but you know, we'd have loads of leaders on the team, and lots of lads just stood up and kind of, you know, were counted and kind of said, look, and didn't mention Brendan's name, but they just said, lads, regardless, we're bigger than any one player and we need to stand up and show what we can do, and you know, lads deserve huge credit for that. Our captain John Murphy, lads like Kieran Moran, you know, when he speaks you listen, and you know, Sean Gannon, lads like these, just leaders, they're born leaders, and they kind of said, look, we need to just pick ourselves up and go. So your coach is there, lads, when we're giving the ball in, and he might mention, you know, he might say, look, we're giving it in to, and he just picks a name. So like the name, a lot of the time when we're talking about kickouts and we're talking about anything goes, it was just Brendan's name that would come out of the coach's lips or whatever, or the manager's lips, because for a lot of the time he was winning a lot of our kickouts. the name that's come out of the lips has just really changed, but we haven't changed a whole lot in that we might look a bit different to play, but we haven't intentionally changed. As we play, we might look a bit different on the field, but in the manner in which we play, but we haven't intentionally changed anything in that there's a belief there that lads like Owen Root, Sean Murphy, as I said, Sean Gannon, and I'm hoping not to leave anyone out, but Dara Foley, lads who can go out and win and field ball.
They just step in.
Have just stepped in, exactly, yeah.
In terms then of, no matter who the personnel is there a lot of video analysis? Is there a lot of talk about tactics in the Carlow side?
There is a lot of video analysis. For the most part of the year, it was analysis of ourselves, trying to improve ourselves. So, different aspects, kickouts, defensive, offensive, things we could do different. I suppose trying to eliminate mistakes or be more efficient or economical. There has been a small bit then of analysis of other teams, where you might say that, look, this is where we could gain an edge or something like that. But I suppose there's loads of different elements to it.
Yeah, because I'm always intrigued by how much work you put into tactics, because your game plan is widely discussed, and I think now there's a kind of a correct opinion out there that there's a general appreciation for how Carlow play. I think the negative approach was just not true, really, to be honest. Having been there when you beat Kildare, that was as entertaining an approach and a tactical game plan as I've seen in Gaelic football in recent years. So clearly it's a big part of your thought process. But in terms of your own individual role then, would you agree with the idea that in that Kildare game in particular, your game plan was to isolate you a good bit, and that you weren't just sticking over the freeze? The plan was for you to get the ball and win the freeze in the first place as well.
Yeah, I suppose I won one or two of them, and I got my hands on as much ball as I could. The idea it's not always, I suppose tactics don't always turn out as they're supposed to on a board or whatever. The idea is that not to have as great a gap maybe as often exists between, but I suppose when you're defending a lead, which is a situation that maybe we didn't expect to find ourselves in so early, there is that kind of caution where we're there was a couple of times maybe that our coach ran across the field and changed a few things that we were initially planning on doing, because we found ourselves in a more positive situation than maybe we could have, even ourselves could have dreamed that we would have been in. So yeah.
Stevie's running onto the pitch saying, listen, this is the situation we're in, kind of throw the game plan out the window to a certain extent because you didn't expect to be in that position?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's throw the game plan out the window. The fundamentals don't change, but it might be a different approach to kickouts. It might be a different approach to the sides of the field that we're coming down, or whatever it is. And it's not like I say, sometimes it doesn't concern me, but I might hear the things that involve me, which are maybe opposition kickouts, and there might be a slight change to that without giving a whole lot away. But it's never, the fundamentals are always the same. We defend the same and we try to attack the same regardless throughout the game.
That's very interesting, one thing you said there in terms of the opposition kickouts. So you would actually hear the goalkeeper maybe making certain noises or a certain shout, and you can start to identify what that shout means and you can communicate to your midfielders. Is it that?
Yeah, possibly. So they might have a call. You'll always try and identify calls. We played Dublin last year and I never heard as many calls as
really. Yeah.
I was baffled by the amount of calls that they had.
And what are the calls? What's Stephen Cluxton saying?
Well, they were numbers. I remember Jason Sherlock running onto the field. A lot of them were numbers. And to be honest with you, there's still have 15 players in the field who can only set up in X amount of different formations. But I suppose the way in which you call it out allows them to kind of maybe confuse their opponent for a little bit longer, and they probably change those names every game. So I can't say which. It's just maybe when you identify one that has been a consistent pattern, that if the coach notices it, he says it. But just as often, I suppose, we're a kind of an aged and experienced team in many ways, and you might have a player in the field who notices something and the word just spreads, so it changes. That's all.
Just one last question on that Dublin calls thing, because I haven't heard that before. So Sherlock's running onto the pitch, and is he shouting a number to Cluxton, or is he giving Cluxton
No, generally this could be across the middle of the pitch. So even I was standing at 11 for some of that game, and I heard calls 44 different calls like this, and they obviously mean something. Now for us, so I don't know whether they were for their own kick out or for the opposition kick out. It depended. So sometimes there was a call when they had a kick out, sometimes there was a call when we had a kick out. But the large amount of them were for how they attacked our kick outs, because I suppose for Cluxton's kick outs we dropped back at the time. So they didn't need to. They could kick the ball to the nearest man, he was free. So a lot of it was for how they were approaching our kickouts, yeah.
Right, okay. We've been chatting about video analysis there a moment ago. whenever I think of video analysis, I think of the column Brendan Bugler wrote on the AIB website earlier this year. I'm not sure if you saw it yourself, but he was just sick of the level of video analysis, that he thought that some people needed more of it than others, that he was at a stage in his life where he didn't need to be sitting in a tape room for an hour watching tapes on an opposition that he's seen tens of times before. And it actually reminded me of what you were saying this week about how your approach to training has been the opposite of that not everybody is tarred with the one brush, so to speak. Like, you've had your injuries and you've been allowed to take a back seat in some of the more strenuous elements of training leading up to a match, for example.
Yeah, I wouldn't go into that. That makes it sound very professional and detailed. I think the tailor-made approach comes from the fact that we'll say, and I can speak personally in this, if I turn up to training and we'll say for whatever reason I'm very sore, I feel that maybe I've exerted myself, my load has been too high, or whatever I've done, or I've tried something in between sessions, and I'm sore coming to training, and I feel it maybe at risk that, there's never a problem if I say, look, lads, is it alright if I, skip a certain part tonight, or in other words, can I just ease the load? They'll decide what it is. There's a trust, exactly, yeah. And I don't know, for different lads, we'd have the likes of Jordan Morrissey, Conor Crowley, these lads playing a high level of college football during the year, and plenty more with them as well. Mark Rennick, Sigerson winner this year, and they would have been training during the week, and some of them training under 20s. Conor Crowley's training under 20s, so all that, I don't see a lot of that going on, but I do realise the odd night that someone is standing out, and I know there's a reason why, and I think that it's not something that's overlooked. Maybe in previous years it was.
Do you want to recite all your injuries for everybody at home? Can you possibly remember all the injuries you've suffered throughout your career?
Well, I suppose no, I can't really. I wouldn't be able to list them off for you, but I remember I was talking to a fella last week. I think it was Ian Reardon from the Times, and he was saying that he just asked something about surgeries, and I can recount I've had 10, I suppose football related, but and they span from kind of, I suppose, when I've since I've been 18, and thankfully I haven't had one now in a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a remarkable list of operations, really. It's been serious stuff, and do I dare say that the spleen injury was the worst one you suffered?
Yeah, it was by far. I suppose, and that led to the bowel and the lung injuries. They were a chain of events, if you get me.
You might just explain that chain of events for anybody who might have missed that. So
I was 18. I was studying for the Leaving Cert, and I was actually sitting at home doing a bit of study, very little, if I'm being honest. And I got a phone call to play a practice game for a club. We were playing Suncroft in Kildare, and I went out, and there were short numbers, and my own club had 15 players on the field when I got out, so I was first sub. So they brought me on at half time, and I came onto the game and got a kind of an innocuous elbow. I went down and I felt winded, but it wasn't going away, so they took me back off, put on the fella who had come off at half time, and I went into the dressing room, and I remember waking up then in the dressing room with people over me, so I obviously went to untie my boots or something and just said I'd lie down for a minute, I wasn't feeling well. And from there I went on to A&E, but I was still in school, so this was a Sunday. I was actually delighted with a day off, and I remember the woman asking me in A&E, what did you last have to eat, which is probably a routine question, and I was brutally honest with her, and my mother was standing beside me. I just said 100 penny sweets, which is actually what I had, when you were studying or whatever. But anyway, so I went in, I had an operation that night on my ruptured spleen. A week through hospital, and I wasn't getting any better, so they opened me up again, and it was a perforated bowel, and during the second surgery my lung collapsed. So if you get me, that's kind of how one led to the other.
That's an incredible chain of events. So initially when you get the elbow, you said it was innocuous, and you said it felt like you were winded, so the pain was very minor. I mean, if you had gone home that evening, you could easily have said I was just winded, and it just lasted a bit longer. Yeah, well, actually a friend of mine, Shane O'Neill, he's an occupational therapist, and the club chairman at the time, Davy Power, these two men were over me in the dressing room, and they were adamant get him to a care doc, which is their emergency doctor in Carlow. So I went in, and the care doc was a man. He was a man there at the time, and he actually said to me, you're not cooperating. And I knew what he meant in terms of, he asked me, to lean right or whatever, and I couldn't, just the pain was too much. And he said, look, we'll just send you down for observation. And when I was in Kilkenny, I went in for x-ray, and only I collapsed in the x-ray, they said, we'll keep you. But I suppose things could have been different with internal bleeding. My medical knowledge now is very limited, but had I gone home, it might have been a lot different. And it wasn't until 4 o'clock, so that was maybe 11 o'clock that night, but it wasn't maybe till 4 o'clock in the morning until I woke up in roaring pain.
Yeah, that's Paul Broderick of Carlow in conversation with our own Owen Shane at PwC HQ1. Was that the location?
Yeah,
looks
precisely.
Pretty bloody slick.
It did indeed. Yeah, I was going to compare to Two-Face here from.
You were. I had to Google that one.
You were squinting a bit for most of that
interview.
You're in and
out of the
bad
sun
position.
and the shade. It's
How dehydrated were you after that interview? Did you have to take on about 3 gallons of water?
Oh, I was purely sunstroked. I've just recovered. I come straight from the hospital.
It's almost as if somebody played a practical joke on you from the production team, getting you to sit in that armchair in the sun.
You know, Kenny.
We're taking the piss out of you, is what he said.
Great professional though. Great. He ploughed on.
Yeah, right through any sort of near-death experience. I will keep interviewing a subject.
The chairs were very awkward. Kenny was saying the arms were at a bit of an odd sort of position.
I thought you just needed to be maybe a couple of cushions underneath, just elevate you. Just I'm not suggesting that.
Oh, Kenny,
don't let him steer.
So hard.
Don't let him steer it up now.
Oof.
Owen.
That really hurt my feelings.
All sorts of shade you're finding today. This is
we're tight. You're not going to split us.
Right. 5 to 9 on this Friday morning. A couple of bits still to bring you. We're hoping to speak with Sophie Spence very shortly about the news that broke in the Irish Times. I think it might have been yesterday. Gavin Cummiskey writing that the RFU had denied the Irish Rugby women's team the opportunity to tour Australia alongside the men's team, and needless to say, all those involved with Irish women's rugby are pretty furious about it, so we're going to speak with Sophie Spence about that shortly. We do want to have some reflections, however, on our show last night where we went to Vicar Street for a Euro 88 special. It was a great night with a Celtic panel there as well, and we had John Giles in the house. You can check it all out on offtheball.com. It was a great night. Ray Houghton was there, Kevin Moran was there, and Ronnie Whelan was there. They were all on the couch. They were talking Euro 88, and Nathan asked him to give us a story that we hadn't heard before.
I did ask earlier before we came on if there was any story that we hadn't heard about Euro 88 over the last 30 years. You're a bit like the Rolling Stones at this stage. The hits come out on a regular basis when you're doing these type of nights. And Ronnie, you have one story, you reckon, that hasn't been spoken about too many times?
It has been now and again. No, when we got back from Germany, we back into. I'm off now. We were back into Dublin. There was the tour of the city, so we were drinking all around the tour of the city, and everybody had a lot of drink. And we got back to the hotel. Myself, Ray, and Aldo were on a 9-10 o'clock flight or whatever it was. So we decided, in our wisdom, that we would phone up the wives and say we can't get back out. There's a big dinner. So 3 of us went up to the rooms, phoned our wives, and we're back down in 10 minutes with our bags ready to go, because the wives said, get yourselves home. But we had a few more pints in the airport, and we eventually got on the plane, and we were like second row from the front. So we take off, and we're only 5 minutes into the air, and Ray goes, I need the toilet. He said, I've got to go to the toilet. I said, Ray, the light's on, you can't go. And he just was adamant, and he's climbing over me, right? So he climbs over me, and he gets up out of his chair, and the toilet is there. So I'm thinking he's going to go to the toilet, and he takes one step towards the toilet, and then he turns around, and then the whole plane is packed. And he looks down the plane, and he goes, who put the ball in the England net?
Carry on with the rest.
No, leave it
I should have had that other pint, let me tell you. I was all right up until that last pint.
That's pretty good stuff, Kenny.
Oh, the lads have got some great stories. I never toured them. I remember doing a thing with John Aldridge, actually, and Tony Cascarino, maybe a couple of years ago. I might have been in the lead into the last European, the finals we were in France, and I could just sit there and listen to them all night. Oh, great times. Talking about that kind of bit of togetherness, the kind of dynamic in the dressing room. They had a special relationship, those players, that squad of players, fantastic. Probably played a part, I'd suggest, in the success they had. Great players as they were individually, but the kind of togetherness they had, the kind of camaraderie was phenomenal.
A couple of things we wanted to talk to you about. One of them was potentially the next breed of leaders that are coming through this Republic of Ireland team. Declan Rice, particularly, has been in the news this week that he's turning down the offer, it seems, that's on the table from West Ham. He kind of thinks that he's valued a little bit more than that.
Good luck to him.
Seems sort of justified, seems like a pretty good call.
Yeah, I think so. It's good to see.
Brave call.
No, not so much a brave call. You've got to back yourself as a player. There's enough clubs that look to take advantage of you and get you on the cheap. Particularly those owners out West Ham have had some experience of them. So yeah, he's right. I'm sure he values himself in terms of, he understands his worth in the West Ham team at this moment in time. I saw him play live New Year's, was it New Year's Day, I think it was, at Wembley. I was there when Nathan, West Ham played Tottenham. I wanted to see him play because I worked with Declan, the under-19s, just over a year ago, and obviously I've followed him as I have done most of the lads. So
what's his natural position?
I think he's probably too young to say that. He's still only 19, 20 years of age.
Where would you like to see
him? We played him at centre half. He played left-sided of it too. Was obviously very comfortable there off his left and right side. Good defensive attributes and very comfortable with the ball at his feet. I must admit, prior to the game against the USA, if someone had said he's a shoe-in for a centre midfield position, a holding midfield position, I would have said, yeah, he can play there because of those defensive attributes that I'm talking about, because he can get on the ball, he can keep it simple, he's very efficient in terms of his distribution. But in terms of a ball-playing centre midfield player, somebody who can be really kind of a creative edge to him, who can really break the lines with his passing, I would have been a little bit unsure. I would have thought, I'm not too sure as yet.
Have you been convinced otherwise? Haven't seen him?
Well, off the back of that second half performance against the USA, I can't say how impressed I was.
Very mature.
Yeah, in possession of football, the position, even before he got possession of football, Adrian, the positions that he was taking up, always head in a swivel, checking out space, just drifting into little pockets of space, receiving the ball, even under pressure, knowing when the pressure was coming, pop it off first time, open your body up, and always looking to play forward, breaking those lines with his pass and taking people out of the game. Wasn't too many 40-yard defence splitting diagonal passes, I remember, but I remember plenty 10, 15-yard passes punched into people's feet, into those little pockets of space.
Is that then his natural position now, from given the strengths that we have in defence and the deficiencies we have there? Is that?
No, I think that's a good point, because I think he could play in, I wouldn't like to pigeonhole him any one position, but you look at the makeup of the team at the moment, the number of options Martin has, particularly in that central defensive area. Shane Duffy, Kieran Clark, I know he's been out for quite some time. Darren Lennon came in, equipped himself very well. Derek Williams has come in of late. We have a number of options. I haven't mentioned the likes of Richard Keogh and the sort of really good options there, particularly if Martin's thinking of going to the back three. But in central midfield, that holding position in terms of somebody prepared to get on the ball and actually get us up the field with his pass, and Declan probably stands out in that respect. Some very good players in that area of the pitch with different types of attributes. I'd suggest the likes of Jeff Hendrick, for me, more of a forward-thinking player, likes to get involved higher up the pitch. Conor Houraghan, the same players who like maybe to look to the ball to go beyond them and go join in, where Declan's very comfortable playing on the half turn. And you're right, there's not too many. Maybe James McCarthy potentially could step back in at a later date if he gets himself back into the squad, but at the moment Declan gives us a real option, that type of player with the abilities that he's shown at the moment in that area of the pitch, and I suggest probably that's where Martin's looking for him to play going forward.
Is there a particular Premier League club then in that instance where he would slot in beautifully into?
I wouldn't say one in particular. I expect him to sign for West Ham. It's one of those bargaining things, you know. I'm not signing that, but I'm sure there'll come some kind of agreement. Declan's highly regarded down there, by the way. I'm a West Ham area myself. I know how highly they speak of him, the fans, and the position the West Ham owners are in at this moment in time from a PR point of view. They can't afford to mishandle this situation with Declan. So I'd expect a little bit of to and from potentially over the next couple of weeks, but Declan to sign an extended contract close to his terms by the time the season starts.
Yeah, all right, well, we should watch that with interest. There's definitely a bit of excitement about him. It's
understandably,
and from watching him as well. So that goes after over the next little bit. The other thing we wanted to talk to you about was we'd asked you to come up with a list of. I'm not actually 100% sure what we asked you to come up with, right?
Exactly. Sort of I'm glad you said that, because this started off with me getting a text from Tommy, the producer. I don't want to name names, but I just have, saying, and he pointed the finger in Owen's direction. He said, "Owen's come up with a great idea for this show." So what's that? He said, "Oh no! I've got to let Owen explain it to you. It was, he needs to put some meat on the bone."
What was your idea?
Well, let me finish my story first, right? So I'm thinking, Owen's a little bit left field merchant, so I thought, well, this would be interesting. I'm generally not one, as you know, for the kind of the general banal kind of Q&A stuff. But I thought, well, I'll give him, I'll hold off. Yeah. So when Owen couldn't be contacted, I got a text back from
your phone.
Got a text back from Tommy to say, look, can't get contact, well, I'll send you the question. I said, yeah, do that. So I was literally looking at my phone, this would be interesting. Owen doesn't, he does his own way. Question comes through, Kenny, could you give consideration to the best 5 defenders you've ever seen?
That wasn't my idea.
God. Talk about a damn squib.
I know.
I mean,
absolute letdown. I mean, that was it. I think that was the best they come up with. Those meetings,
you've got it all
round
wrong.
the table meetings. You've
got it all wrong. This is what happens.
I haven't looked at that. That's exactly how it went down on my phone. The
in your
conversations
phone,
I had.
That's just obviously lack of communication. What I wanted to do, Kenny,
I'm glad you said that.
What I wanted to do, and
I've got you on a bit of a pedestal.
What I wanted to do.
That's nothing to do with your height either. That's
this is incredible. This is incredible.
Oh my God.
What I wanted to do was go out and go to the airport chipper with you and review the spice burgers there. That was seriously it.
No, the airport chipper, now see, you've got your information wrong again. It's not the spice burgers, it's the wagon wheel onion rings in the airport takeaway.
So that's what we would have gone and tasted the wagon wheels or the onion rings.
Did you do that?
Horses bolted a bit. Horses bolted a little bit.
The horse is not bolted.
I think so.
In the whatever.
That had to be more of a spontaneous. That had to be more of a spontaneous thing for it to work.
If Owen doorsteps you at the airport sometime.
No, I don't like something that's too. It's got to be spontaneous.
What?
The airport chipper isn't anywhere near the airport.
It's on the way, Whitehall.
It's in Whitehall, I know it.
Home farm, just on the last.
I've never actually given a consideration that you do pass it on your way to the airport, but it's actually miles away. I should mention as well, I don't know if we were, the last time you were in, sorry, we're going to get to your defenders down in a second, but it's an opportune moment to mention that the last time you were in, you were, as every time you're in, you were unbelievably fulsome in your praise of one bakery particularly. Said bakery got in touch after you were here, Kenny, you were not aware of any of this, and said, listen, we hear you've been talking about our tea cakes, and they sent us in Thunder's Bakery a whole box of beautiful tea cakes.
Hold on a minute, I thought Kenny sent those in.
No, they came from Thunders.
The thing is, I never get to sample any. I remember a big box of...
they're beautiful.
Yeah, I remember a big box of Cow's Crisps arriving somewhere. Some corporation. Was that here?
We kept
you
back.
Keep them. I never saw you. Might have kept them, but I never saw any of them.
You did, and the reason you got them was that on the bag was written cheese and Cunningham. Was that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They made a favourite for you.
I've got a couple of personalised bags. I've actually kept them. I even brought them back to show the young fella. You're right. Cheese and Cunningham and Kenny salted.
Yeah,
a couple of I've actually
I've
kept them.
That was from us. I mean, they sent them in to us, and then
you're trying to claim.
Those tea cakes are sensational.
I wouldn't have known. I haven't.
Did you not have to?
No,
they emailed saying, "Oh, you were talking about the tea cakes," but that wasn't what you were talking about.
Well, not those particular ones that arrived. Like the general.
Tea cakes from Thunders.
No. Anything. I'll take anything from Thunders.
A French fancy, I know, is your... Right, let's segue nicely along to Kenny's all-time top 5 defenders.
Done a huge amount of research into this, as you well.
Most admired and influential. We get a good shot of this. This is Kenny's...
That was scribbled on the 27 bus this morning on the way into town.
Looking up Varane here on the back. Right, what have you got for us? Do you want to do it in reverse order for us?
I don't take too many notes, but I thought I better. Well, what are you looking for? I mean, initially I heard the
hardiest.
5 hardiest.
Which isn't the real word.
Whatever that means, yeah, exactly. That's
so your most admired or the
dash. You might as well have said put down a few forwards with a bit of dash. Typical Brian Kerr. I think that's purely Brian Kerr speak.
Is it, right?
Yeah, well, hardy is a word I think Brian used. He's got his own language in terms of his commentaries, which kind of he's quite unique. So, I mean, defenders, I won't go for the obvious ones. I mean, I did say, did you want to qualify in terms of during my lifetime or prior or after?
So you do what you want.
The first standout defender, when I was young, that kind of blew me away a little bit. I really remember being engaged with the AC Milan team of the 80s. I was a big fan. I must have been middle teens then. I must have been becoming a little bit more aware then. Not just watching the game for the game's sake, but individual playing defenders in particular. Obviously, that's where I played. But Baresi in that A Milan team was fantastic. Him and Costa Curta. Maldini went on to be world-class player as well. Played left back in that team. As a defensive unit, I felt they were amazing. A lot of talk of Van Basten, Gillett, Ancelotti, both. A few others higher up the pitch. They had some outstanding players. But that back four unit for me, I remember looking at that, seeing how they kind of functioned. The rules are a little bit different than offside. Everybody charged. How was the ref? It didn't matter if you were lying on the ground with a broken leg. You were still offside. So it was a little bit more easier then in terms of the criteria for offside. But just in terms of how they functioned, and Baresi in particular, a smart defender. Not the most physically imposing. And I wasn't. I played centre half growing up in Dublin, but was, nothing of me still isn't but so those kind of players I always, maybe in the back of my mind I thought, well, if these players can make it, there's an opportunity. You don't have to be the stereotype, big shouldered, you know, physically imposing centre-half, maybe to actually make half a living in the game. So him in particular, I remember being a standout. And funnily enough, even before that, in Dublin, before I went away, I got the opportunity to travel to a few League of Ireland games. A manager of mine had a few contacts League of Ireland, so went to a few games. And I remember the Rovers team of the kind of mid-80s. You would remember potentially owned, but the great Rovers team to talk about. And Dane McKeely, him and Peter Eccles, I think, were the central defensive pairing. I remember the first time I went to see Rovers play, and I remember hearing this voice as I walked to the side of the pitch on the pitch, and it was Dane McKeely's voice barking out instructions. And he was another one, Dermot. Dermot wouldn't have been the most athletic, small, but smart, shrewd, read the game well, barked out orders. Bit of a nasty edge to him, Dermot. I got to know him a little bit better. He played five-a-side with me dad, and he'd end you like Dermot, you know what I mean? Yeah, so we wouldn't have been compatible in that respect. But how he played the game, his intelligence and organising the back four, even then that registered. Although maybe I wasn't looking for it, I think that type of thing registered with me. So any names I'll kind of throw at you off the back of that as I kind of...
Did your dad play to
my dad played in goal. Like he was vertically, he was a little bit vertically challenged. Even more so than other people who go on name. He was a goalkeeper, my dad played junior football. He was a good goalkeeper, but he always said his height held him back. But
would you have been talking to him about centre half position? No,
not really. My dad would give me one over my dad telling me one thing, a bit of advice. He would come to all the games. Remember once he said, "Look, man off the ball. It's always the man off the ball who's the danger." Maybe didn't register too much at the time, but he was right. The number of times, as a centre half, you're focused on the opposition player winger going down the line, and it's all about where the ball's going to end up. Your man on your shoulder, the opposite winger, somebody making a third man run. So I suppose that was the point he was trying to make, and it was a good one. It was the only thing he said to me, but it was a good point. But that type of defender, I always enjoyed watching play. So I take it on there, and I think of Cannavaro, the Italian captain, won the 2006 World Cup. Again, 5'10", not the most, but just game intelligence for me is huge in a player. Even young players now, people say, what's the attributes you look for? Technical ability, generally speaking, all around the pitch. Technical ability, athleticism is a big thing now, obviously all over. Dynamism, all those type of things. But game intelligence for me is something. There'll always be a place in the game at some level for a player who's sharp. He's switched on. He can see it. He sees it early. Makes good decisions in and out of possession of football. And defenders and centre halves in particular, the best defenders have always been the best decision makers, and those type of players in particular had those attributes.
Do you have any fullbacks in your list? Because you were saying there that the art of the fullback is over.
I don't, to be honest with you, for that reason, because a lot of the fullbacks nowadays, I don't consider them defenders, because they're not natural defenders, and they actually don't have to defend. They don't know how to defend, and they're not even asked to defend too much. It's the nature of the game. So when I first started, I could reel off a huge amount. Fullbacks. I always reference the lads I played with Ireland in terms of the fullbacks, because we had some of the best in the world, and I was fortunate that these type of players I played with. This is the reason why I got the amount of caps that I did, because of the quality of players I had around me, alongside me, and to me left and right and in front. And we'd a run of players there. Dennis Irwin, there was nobody better when I first came into the squad. Absolutely outstanding. He was kind of the template for me, Dennis. And then you had Gary Kelly, Steve Finnan, Stephen Carr, Jeff Kennell, wonderful player. Probably didn't get the caps that he deserved because of those players who were around at the same time. There was a period of time Stephen Carr, I used to look at Stephen Carr and think, oh my, this lad could play any team in the world. And likewise Steve Finnan. Because it's just the defensive side to the game and the attack. They had that happy medium. They could defend 1v1 situation. They loved the defending, but also very comfortable in the opposition half the pitch. So if you're talking about full-backs, I'd lean towards those players who I was lucky enough to play with in the Ireland team. And if I don't reference too many people from the Ireland team, I'm not singling people out, generally speaking, because like I said, I was lucky to play with them all. But in terms of kind of centre, my first two games for Ireland, I'm sure I played alongside Paul. It was his last two games. Czech Republic and Wales. Wales away, miserable night. Don't think there was even 10,000 people there. Nobody will even remember the game, but I did. And I remember because I played alongside Paul. It could have been his last game. Paul wasn't at his best then. His career was coming to an end. But it was a huge thrill to play alongside him. One of the highlights of my career, I had the opportunity, amongst others, but Paul in particular, because I put Paul up there as a centre half.
Kenny?
I think it was Wales, a friendly game against...
In the Cardiff Arms Park?
Yeah,
I was at that game.
No way.
Yeah.
You remember it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember
miserable evening and rain, it was drizzle.
It was one of the only times I saw Paul McGrath live, and I remember thinking what an unbelievable sense of positioning that he had, even at that stage of his career, because I think it was his last game.
Because his legs would have gone to a certain extent. Legs were always gone. Somebody would say, but I couldn't get around the pitch as much. But what surprised me, a little bit about Paul, was good little talker, not a shouter or a screamer, but helped me out. Good information, little bit of encouragement, that type of thing was great. It meant everything to me at the time, because I would have been a little bit out of my depth when I first got into the Ireland team. So yeah, that was great. That was like I said, that was a big thrill to have the opportunity to play, literally rub shoulders and play alongside Paul as a central defensive pairing.
One of the things that stood out for me, and we're going to press pause on your list for the minute and we're going to come back to it. One of the things that stood out for me from that night was Robbie Savage was getting warmed up on the touchline for the majority of the game, and he was just getting all sorts of stick. He had long blonde flowing hair at the time, and he was getting all sorts of stick from the crowd.
He still got the flowing hair,
yeah. So that was it. So we'll come back to that list in a few minutes. Thanks for the minute, Kenny. We'll be back to that in a minute. But we do want to talk about one of the stories that came across our radar yesterday. It seemed to first appear in the Irish Times. Gavin Cummiskey writing, it's in the newspaper this morning. Ireland legends express outrage as tour ejected. So this was the news that the RFU, it has just emerged, as I said, in the last 24 hours, that they had turned down the opportunity to take on a tour to Australia that would run alongside the men's tour that's obviously getting underway tomorrow, and a big opportunity for exposure for the women's team, and a big opportunity for them to gain some experience, and a lot of good reasons to think that might have been a good opportunity for the Irish women's team, but it wasn't to be. And to discuss this, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Ireland international Sophie Spence and the former Ireland captain Fiona Coughlin. Good morning to you both, and thanks for taking the call. Fiona, I'll go to you first. Just your initial reaction to the idea that the RFU, I know, have responded to it as well. They say they're wanting to focus on the November fixtures, which doesn't necessarily seem to fully address the rationale behind this decision.
Yeah, they said that it's part of the strategy to focus on the November internationals. I don't know the strategy that they're working off, because currently they're undergoing a review and a new strategy to come out. So I find it a bit hard to believe that that's the reason. Like, I have no problem saying no to it, this tour, if there is something in place and there is plans in place and there is a pathway that they see it going, because it is a huge financial burden. I know Josephine Tucker offered to pay for the accommodation, but there is a lot more cost around it, the flights and staffing and everything along those lines. So I know it is a huge financial burden, but I don't think the real reason that it's based on the November internationals, that's why they're not doing it. I do think it's a financial issue, which is fine, but come out and say it.
Yeah, it seems as if, from what we read in the Irish Times, that Aer Lingus might have been happy to partner up to take care of the flights, and as you say, the accommodation seemed to be looked after, so the financial end of it didn't necessarily seem to have been the biggest burden. But it's the transparency thing, Fiona, clearly, that from what you're saying is one of the main issues at hand here.
Yeah, I think this has been a problem, and this is why there's been so much, I suppose, outrage over the last year with regards around the women's team. It's just not known the direction that the RFU want to go with women's rugby. And I'm not even just talking about the national team, I'm talking about across the board from grassroots. And I think that's really important. I think the focus is always put on the national team, but for me, it's about the development of the game from grassroots all the way up, and the pathways young girls can get involved in the game and then transition through if they want to, and if they're good enough to make the international team. And I've been involved in the game for 15 years, and I just haven't seen that pathway really improve at all. Yes, there's more young girls playing, but it's not a structured pathway in order for them to prove it. Sophie,
you might just take on that point for us, if you would. It does strike me that this, and it's in tandem with a bunch of other decisions that I guess have been made over the last couple of years, doesn't seem to be the most amazing message to be sending out to young women and girls who want to get involved necessarily in rugby.
Yeah, do you know, I suppose as a sport for all, you want young girls to be able to pick up a ball at the same age as boys do, and I think that's a disappointing thing. If you know, there's opportunities like this for a lot of learning and a lot of experience as a young squad to develop. Do you know, when parents are saying things like this in the public, do they want the young girls to actually continue or even try and pick up a rugby ball? So you're trying to, I suppose, create opportunities and break down those barriers I suppose, that they shouldn't be there.
And in terms of, I mean, just talk to us a small bit about the benefits that we haven't seen a huge amount of women's touring teams necessarily, and it's something that you know, maybe at some point soon can actually become a thing. And obviously, the ARU are trying to make serious strides in that regard. But just talk to us a small bit about what can be gained, obviously, from the women's point of view in terms of where they're at the minute, and the development that could come with a tour like this.
Yeah, from the women's side of things, you know, we finished 8th in the last World Cup, so we've still got to qualify for the next World Cup. Which, from a new squad, there was a lot of retirements after the World Cup there last year. So from a young squad, trying to develop an opportunity now coming off the back of a Six Nations where they finished 3rd, which I think with new management was a good finish. It's all about trying to perform and get those performances together and get more time together. So the opportunity to actually travel, learn from the men's side of things as well, because these guys are professionals. If you can actually take a couple of things from them on the training ground, see what they do and how they do things, you know, it's a lot of learnings. But being in camp for a certain period of time together as well, it's that environment that you don't get as a female player. And I think that's the major thing now. We've got to wait until next November for a test match where you might only be in camp for maybe 2 days. And then you go on to the Six Nations again.
I've been reading some of you've been tweeting about it over the last 24 hours, and the frustration is very clear. What's your message to the RFU as somebody who has just recently left the international scene?
I think, you know, it's really important. It's like what Fee said, and a lot of us are saying, it's not just about the senior team. Obviously, very privileged to play and put on a green jersey. But for us, it's all about inspiring the next generation. We want to leave the jersey in a better place. We want young girls to be inspired. We want to be role models for them. But in order for us to do that, we need to have the resources put in place within the grassroots levels to make sure that the game is actually in a good place. The talent is there in the country. And, you know, to see that things like this are being knocked without the resources, we're not actually going to, I suppose, get those development opportunities that we could have, that other countries are actually doing, with premierships coming up and contracts being given within the 15s game. So I think for us, it's about resourcing the game and really putting structures in place so that girls know, right, once I leave minis rugby to youth rugby, I know that my province is there. Now, what's the next step? How do I get onto the national squad? Do I have to wait and compete against 25-plus-year-olds, or is there going to be an under-20 squad that I can actually take an opportunity and show what I can do?
Just showing a tweet for people who are tuned in on offtheball.com and the audio player. We're just showing a tweet here from Seni Naupu, Ireland International. She says, sick of staying quiet about missed opportunities for shared learning. Been working on a paper investigating a model of promotion and development in women's sport that could be sustainable for women's rugby in Ireland. But what's the point, she asks, when a key characteristic of successful models is integrating with the men? It does seem, Fiona, just looking at it and reading about it over the last little while, there's been a report into Sophie mentioned the World Cup last year. There's been a report done into that, the results of which haven't been made public. There's been another committee that's been set up to investigate the future of the women's game here. We don't know the outcome of that because it hasn't been made public yet. Is there a doubt around, Fiona, the IRFU's commitment to women's rugby here?
It's a bit hard to know because we don't really know what's going on. Yes, the review has taken place. As far as I'm aware, the results are not going to be published at the review. And the women's game will fall into the strategy, the overall RFU strategy that's supposed to be out in June. Whether that's still happening in June, I'm not sure. But I think for us to believe that they find value, I think that's the biggest thing. Do they find value in the women's game? I'm not talking about financial value, but what is the value that they find in the women's game, and are they going to invest in increasing that? And look, I don't think this is just a rugby issue. Rugby is the story today. Like, we had soccer before, we've had hockey, cricket. This is a society and a cultural shift that we need. So maybe something needs to come from government around this. And I know Sport Ireland are at the moment doing a review themselves and are going to publish a paper, and hopefully that will bring. But something big needs to happen with regards for women's sport to take the next leap.
Yeah.
And like as I said, it's not commercial. It's about what sport brings to the individual, what sport brings to society.
Like, it's almost in some regards a shame that we're having to talk about it in this regard, but the government would be, given the funding that's involved there, and it's happened in other sports as well, within their rights to say, listen, unless these things start to happen, we're going to withdraw some of this funding or pull back on some of this funding. I mean, it's kind of incredible that the RFU would need that encouragement almost, but I mean, it would be within the government's remit to do something like that.
Yeah, it would, and I get there is more boys playing rugby, or there's more boys playing sport than girls, but what we need to do is get them on par, is get more girls playing sport. And how do you do that? You have to invest in it and have to have the pathways in place, and it's just not there in Irish sport.
How inclusive have they been in terms of those committees and reviews that have been set up, Fiona? Like, it did again strike me reading a little bit about this story over the last, picking her up last night, that somebody like yourself would be pretty ideally positioned, having captained Ireland and, you know, have a foot in the media camp as well, and with a bit of remove from having been involved in the game, would be a pretty good person to be consulting in this kind of thing. How involved do you know, in terms of yourself and maybe other players have been involved in any of those reviews?
They did do. They had a meeting with past players. We had it at Christmas time, so there was a number of past players there. They had a meeting with current squad players. They did go around all the clubs. Fiona Steed did sit on that committee as a past player, and she's now in the coaching game and in media as well. So Fiona, in fairness, is of the same level that I would be at experience-wise. I don't know really what power that committee had. Yes, they could do a review, but I don't know what the terms of reference were with regards to the recommendations that came from that review.
Why do you think
they were going to be implemented or not?
Yeah, why do you think they're holding back on those? Is it a case of that the game is in such a bad state of repair that they don't want to go public with that, or why do you think we're not getting the full story here?
I really don't know. You'd have to ask some of the Irish for that. Like, I just think that if you want to truly reflect on your goods and bads, like you would after a team performance, you have to be brutally honest about things. And if you really want something to improve, you have to look at the good things and bad things as well. And, you know, I just don't see what harm it is bringing that out into the public eye and people seeing what the state is. And if the numbers aren't there, okay, that's why the money isn't in, but what do we need to do to improve the numbers and get more money in and everything like that? I think the best thing to do would be release it. And then the actions after that. For me, it's not about the strategy, it's about the implementation of the new strategy.
Yeah, and let us have some discussion about it in a public forum, I think would certainly not be the worst thing in the world. The last word to you on this one, Sophie. I mean, I don't know if you see any resolution to this. It does feel like another notch that's been on this ongoing story around the women's rugby team. We had the head coach story that seemed to get resolved pretty amicably in the end, but the handling of it that maybe wasn't amazing, and the World Cup preparation and all that kind of thing. It just feel like another step in that direction. But how do you see this getting resolved now, or how would you like to see it get resolved?
I think what Fiona's just touched on there, it is about being honest. And I think that honesty to look at whether if you are focusing on, and I think that's a bit of a respect thing as well at where we're at. But there's so many past players, whether they've just retired now or whether they've retired 5, 10, 15 years ago, who want to be involved in the game and who are good heads into knowing they've been there, they've done that, whether it's to take up an admin role, whether they take up a coach role. But there are people on the ground who actually want to be involved and be part of this to make sure that the game is actually going to go somewhere. So I think, you know, it's brilliant. They've heard what past players, current players, clubs actually want. But it's about actually giving them, I suppose, a duty to actually take the game in a direction, but we need to know what that direction is. Does it feel like there's a bit of a lack of respect at the minute then? To be honest, it kind of is, yeah. I think the fact of we don't know where the game is actually focused on, is it 15s, is it 7s, is it men, is it women? It should be just rugby. And realistically, it's quite sad that we're actually having to have these discussions now. You know, if it was just the sport, we wouldn't have to be doing this now. All right. Sophie Spence, Fiona Coughlin, thanks a million for taking the call this morning. At short notice as well, thanks a lot for that, because we thought it was a story that was definitely worth coming to. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more discussion about it. We hope there's a lot more discussion about it. We'd love to talk to the IRFU about it. We'd love if they would come forward with some of the findings of the committees that they've set up into those things. I can't see what harm that will do. We all understand that the game, the women's game, might be in better shape, so let's just come forward, warts and all, and I guess sort of have those discussions publicly. As I said, there is a story that was broken by Gavin Comiskey in the Irish Times, and there's lots of good stuff there. Thanks again to Sophie and Fiona for coming on to discuss all of that. Get your comments, keep them coming into us. We normally try to set records every time we're on here on a Friday morning, Kenny. As you know, that what's the latest time we can possibly get off air? We're pushing 9:30 now, and there's still no sign of us slowing up, so we'll keep rocking on for the minute. You're going to come back to your do you know what we'll do actually? Let's talk about the Republic of Ireland women's team, who are going to take on Norway in the first of what's a bit of a two-header tonight, and then they're going to have the return leg on Tuesday evening in Stavanger in Norway. It seems like a couple of draws will do here for the Irish team to be on the brink of making the playoff.
for the World Cup. So there's lots of work to be done because Norway are a pretty tough opposition, top seeds in the group, and Ireland have a few injuries, and there's a lot of aspects feeding into it. We just saw some shots there, Colin Bell, the Irish team in action. There's a quick look at the table and the current state of play. So the key thing in all of that, if you looked on the played there, Norway obviously, if it came in hand, that could be the one that results in Ireland coming a cropper a little bit. They still have to play Holland, which is the one thing hugely in Ireland's benefit, and possibly if Holland could do us a bit of a favour there, that would we'd take that.
Looks like 2 wins, and even like you say, 2 draws and a win against Norway. No, it's not a given. It'll probably be enough. Yeah,
might get it done. So, Maura Tarasini-Callig, off the balls reporter, has been out and about at the Irish women's team training yesterday ahead of the crucial World Cup qualifier against Norway. And the Ireland coach Colin Bell and midfielder Diane Caldwell here speaking about how they see this game going.
I think it's going to be very physical game. We're obviously going to have to defend very well, very organised, very disciplined, similar to the way we did in Netherlands. But obviously we've been working now to improve our game offensively, and that's what we've been working on this week, to try to work on our transitions and to be a bit more clinical in front of goal. So that's the next step for us now, and we're just hoping that we can do it tomorrow and fulfil the game plan and get a good result.
We need, obviously, players that are going to be playing that they can survive the whole 90-95 minutes with that intensity. It will be a really, really tough match, and the Norwegians are also, they have a similar mentality to the Irish. That means they're very, very aggressive, like a natural aggression that they obviously try to bring into a positive direction, physically very strong, so we have to be up against them.
Colin Bell there in conversation with Maura Tarasini-Callig yesterday. Kenny was just admiring Colin Bell's beautiful baronet.
How tight was that? No, the turtleneck was at the
top,
right,
wasn't
how tight it was, like, yeah, I was strangling him. I was feeling sorry for Owen in that interview a few minutes ago. I'm feeling more sorry for him there and that.
You weren't banking on this level of abuse when you came into work this morning, on.
Well, it's not really abuse there, the fact that he's not feeling sorry for me.
Collegiate banter.
Is
that what we're at here?
I don't need your sympathy.
It's all about the bands.
So yeah, Colin Bell and Diane Caldwell, we heard from there. Here they are again on their opponents, having managed and played Colin Bell in the Norwegian League.
There's a couple of girls in their squad that I coached. So I know the inside. I know the girls. I still watch a lot of the Norwegian league football every weekend to catch up on what's going on, and also the current form of the players that are in the squad that are still playing in Norway. So yes, we're well informed, and now we're trying to give that information in a filtered, of course, way to the girls that they can use it. And that's what we're hopeful for. We have to make sure that we concentrate on the things that we can do well and exploit their weaknesses.
I played 4 years in Norway, so I'm playing against a few of my ex-teammates and a number of players that I've played against. So I'm well aware of their strengths, but also know their weaknesses too. So hopefully that can help us. I think they know, especially having played against me, what type of player I am, and how that will be in the Irish team also, that we're an aggressive team and going to be hard to play against, hard to break down. So maybe they're aware of the strengths that we possess as a team, but ultimately I think they know it's going to be a hard game for them.
Yeah, that's Diane Caldwell there wrapping up that report from Maura Tarasini-Callig out at Abbottstown for Ireland training. Megan Campbell is out. Harriet Scott is out, Stephanie Roach is out, so there's a few little injuries there that might, I'm sure, have hampered Colin Bell's planning. Just looking at the little snippets there, the cutaways at the training. 1 touch or 2 touch, Kenny? Bit of debate going on.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of it's more of a coaching point, really. I'll mention it there. I remember playing a lot of 2 touch. My professional career at clubs, it was a given thing, like let's play 2 touch. There was obvious method to it in terms of move the ball quickly, don't take too many touches, be dispossessed, take 1 touch and then move it. But I felt I got into some bad habits, and the more I thought about it, you think about it, you look at sessions and you bro, and you think, what's the value of that? What we trying to do here? And there would be occasions you'd be playing, you'd be training, it'd be 2 touch. We're going 2 touch now for 10 minutes. You take 1 touch, you'd have to play it with your next touch, but a pass wouldn't be on. There'd be space in front of you, and really the right thing to do would be to take the space, take a second touch, drive into the space, maybe even a third, and then pass the ball. But you'd be forced into a rushed pass on your second touch. And I remember, even from my point of view, I remember playing a load of two-touch, and I wasn't very comfortable with the ball at my feet. I was technically always very poor, particularly actually travelling with the ball, dribbling with the ball. And I remember assessing it when I was later on in my career and thinking, do you know what, I needed to work a bit more and having more touches at the ball, and actually travelling, having plenty of touches.
I can see the benefit of doing it to try and replicate the pressure cooker.
Yeah, but you'd get quite efficient at one touch pass. But in some respects, a little bit of a get out for me, get rid of the ball quickly. Where on most occasions, I really needed to have another touch or change direction or drop my shoulder or drive into a little bit of space. So really, I understand the logic of it to a certain extent to touch, but when you get to a certain level, you got to trust the players to make the best decision in possession of the ball. That might be 1, 2, 3, 4 touches, dribble, whatever it is. So for me, I'd be wary of those kind of restrictions in those games, particularly two touch, not too much of it, particularly with younger players, because for me, it almost giving them bad habits.
That game, incredibly, is not being televised. It is in Tallaght this evening at 5:30. So if you're about and you fancy watching yourself a pretty intense game of football, I would think get yourselves out to Tallaght 5:30 for that game tonight. Not on the TV. So there we go. Just before we wrap up, Kenny, because we want to talk to him a little bit about England ahead of the World Cup. Some breaking news in this morning that Paddy Jackson has joined Perpignan on a 2-year deal. The Perpignan president, Francois Rivière, confirming that the French club have signed the former Ulster player. Signed a 2-year deal. The Perpignan gained promotion to the top 14 for next season. Their director, Christian Lanta, said that Jackson's international experience will be a big addition. Paddy Jackson, in the tradition of the Irish 10, knows how to put his individual qualities at the services of the collective. They say, of course, the 26-year-old, along with his provincial and international teammate Stuart Olding, had their Ulster contracts which were due to run until June 2019. They had those revoked last month after a review conducted by the RFU and Ulster Rugby following that Belfast rape trial verdict on March the 28th. Both men were acquitted of raping the same woman in June 2016, with Jackson also cleared of sexual assault. 2 of their friends who faced related charges were also found not guilty last month. Olding agreed a 2-year deal with the French Pro Division 2 side Brive. So that's the breaking news this morning. Paddy Jackson signed a 2-year deal with the French club, newly promoted to the top 14 Perpignan. Right, just before we wrap up, it is the eve-ish of the World Cup. We spoke earlier on about England and how the dampeners are on them, Kenny, and the role that Gareth Southgate has played in all of that, masterfully, it has to be said. I think everybody was, I won't speak for everybody, I was a bit underwhelmed when he got the job. It's like, seemed like they were in a pretty unstable position given the old pint of wine stuff that had gone on before that, and actually it was probably a pretty prudent appointment at the time. It might not have come about had it not been for the pint of wine stuff. So maybe they've sort of fallen into it. Seems like the right appointment. They played Costa Rica last night. They beat them 2-0. So
he seems to enforce a bit of an identity. I know it's a little bit of a buzzword. I'm wary of using it. But you look at the English team now since he's come in, you look at how they play tactically, the setup of the team, and there's a real identity to him now. He's kind of committed himself to playing to a back three, wing backs. It's a passing team. They like to play through the tours. It looks as if he's going to go with a front 2 and a midfield 3. And now it's all about just really popping into the personnel and into those individual.
Kane and...
I think Kane and Sterling will play. Rashford, I'm a huge fan of Rashford. He impressed again last night. But I have a feeling Sterling will get the nod where Harry Kane up front. But it's that kind of midfield dynamic. And that system, it is quite loose because he can flip it. He can keep the system, but just very slightly change that midfield dynamic. He can play with one holder, more defence-minded player. I think that'll be Henderson. And 2 more attack-minded players if he wants to. The likes of Ali and Lingard, for me, would probably get the nod over the likes of Loftus Cheek, etc. But in the latter stage, particularly against better opposition, say Belgium might be one of them in the group stages, he could very easily keep predominantly the same shape, but flip to a 2 in midfield, maybe Dyer and Henderson, just solidify that area of the pitch and play with one player a little bit higher just behind the front, whoever that may be. So it's quite a flexible formation. It's interesting. Marin has had a look at it the last few games. Turkey obviously didn't go particularly well for us, but the second half against the USA, I thought just a little signs potentially that system, 3 at the back, wing backs, and you can get your 2 up front. You don't get overrun in midfield. You can get your 3 in midfield. Yes, you don't have a huge amount of combinations down the side. You're asking your wing backs to get up and down the pitch. But for me, we got some of the best. There's not a better wing back than Seamie Coleman in football. I think we got good options on the left as well. So, but the system you have to bed in, and it looks to me as if Southgate's done the work on the training pitch. He's bedded in the system. The players understand it. They understand their roles within the system, and he's actually, most importantly, he's got the players to do it.
Yeah, when you mentioned the players there, it seems that, I'm not sure if they gelled perfectly yet, but it doesn't seem to be any discontent in the camp anyway. And the key word around the squad mentality has been the word click, that he seems to have kind of been preaching this, that he's got rid of all the clicks in the squad. And I'm not sure if that's actually a good thing, because if you think of the cliques in the past, you're thinking of world-class players who might have been in their own little circle in the dressing room. Maybe it's just an instance of England not having a world-class clique within their squad, or am I just being really?
No, I think it does help. Owen, it does. When he talks about cliques, people will always gravitate towards certain people, the younger players within the dressing room, the more experienced players. That's a natural thing, but it can't be at the expense of the kind of dynamic within the squad. What you don't want is real distance between the cliques, and I think England have had that in the past. Has been admitted to the likes of Carricker, Scholes, the kind of Man United thing, the London, the separation, literal separation between these players at mealtime, around the hotel, very little or no communication. For me, that has to have an effect in terms of the dynamic around the dressing room. So I think he has pulled that together a little bit, Southgate. And like I said, I think he's done the work. I think he talks a good game. Certain stuff I can kind of switch off a little bit. But he's very bright, and I think he's got a clear thought process in terms of how he wants the team to play. 3 ball playing centre halves. That tells you how he wants to go. He wants to play from the back through midfield. He wants to play a passing game. I don't think they're most defensively secure. I don't think the 3 defenders that he starts to be the 3 best defenders in England, but then he doesn't want that. He wants kind of ball playing centre halves, comfortable on the ball, that can step into the midfield and link things up. But at least he's got a plan. He's actually given them an identity, and the players, it looks as if they've kind of bought into it and they're quite enjoying it.
Paul Little, good morning to you, Paul. On Twitter says he's 2 daughters who'd love to attend the Ireland women's games this evening, but 5:30 going to be very tight from deepest Wicklow after work. Could they move it to 6 o'clock? Asks Paul. Not at this stage, I wouldn't think, but yeah, you would have thought a bit of a later kick-off gives people a bit of an opportunity to get to it. But there we go. Before we leave you, memorabilia are you going to bring into us the next time you come in? We're going to hold you to it now, Kenny. So
Thunder's memorabilia.
Well,
no, that's it.
That's it. Tea cakes. We're happy.
I'll just leave that there as a little memento of my visit.
I'm going to sort of sellotape that onto myself now, and we're going to blue tag it on, whatever where are you? What's your highlight for the weekend? Where are you going?
Well, this is always the question, isn't it? I don't have one actually.
What? So you're not going to a game this weekend?
No game this weekend. Maybe
no European destinations this weekend?
Well, Croke Park will probably be the most convenient, the doubleheader on Sunday now.
Kenny, do you know what happened last weekend? I mean, I don't want to rake over all calls, but Owen turned down the opportunity to go and see Kerry last weekend. The team that he goes to see in every league match and every
You've moved on, lad, didn't you?
To go to a music festival.
Owen's gone international. Owen's gone international.
Go to a music festival.
Where?
Kilmainham.
Tennessee. I thought you were saying Nashville. I thought you were going to really impress me.
Let's run with Nashville, yeah.
Yeah.
Big country music family.
You are impressed with a lot of things American, I've noticed. Is that a fair comment now?
Well, I guess I'm impressed with things that are good. I'm impressed with things like if they
you got a bit touchy a few weeks ago. I mentioned the NFL in relation to where football was going. I noticed you bit on that a little bit. And you've had a few road trips. You were going to the East Coast. You were doing he's on a couple of American trips. So.
Yeah, so what? Yeah, like it's.
I suppose that's my point.
I love the way you
enjoy that part of the world. You enjoyed.
I do. Yeah, I do. Do you?
That's it.
Like I like the psychoanalysis of me that's been carried out here over the last few weeks. That I was just fishing using my comments.
Just observations, Alan. Just observations.
Right here, it's nearly 10:15. We need to get the hell off air. Kenny, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. It's been a roller coaster, but a pleasure. Really enjoyed your company and hope to catch up with you again soon. Thanks for coming into us, Kenny Cunningham and Owen. Enjoy your weekend, whatever it holds.
Go Westmeath is what I say.
Go Westmeath. We're all beyond that bandwagon. The hurling show is going to be up next. It's not that far away, actually, on Off the Ball. It's at midday on offtheball.com and across all of our social channels as well. Off the Ball is back on the radio tonight, and we're live across the weekend as well. But for the minute, good morning.